that this music is more silly than scary. Yeah, it's Earthbound. You didn't notice? I mean, ooh, ooh. How do you make a ghost noise? Like, ooh. Who invented the ghost going ooh woo 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 thing anyway? I feel like it's a sound that can't be made convincingly with a human voice. But here I am. I'm dead. I died yesterday by getting hit by 5 food trucks, Tesco food trucks, sequentially. And so here I am. I also was holding Usagiri with me at the same time. So they're also dead. It feels weird not having the chat on the side of the screen because I feel like I usually am. I'm like looking over there. Yeah, I didn't even get isekai'd. I just died for real. But here I am. I decided, oh yeah, hold on a second. Before we begin, this is my spookiest thing. I feel like I want to make sure that the music is loud enough, but like not too loud, you know? Let me know how it is like for listening to stories. I went out of my way to arrange a playlist of a bunch of sort of creepy music from games that I like. Thank you for the posture check. I think I've been keeping pretty good posture the past few streams, though. I've been sitting well, although my neck... You know what? I think I'm having better posture when I'm streaming than when I'm sitting and doing my work normally. I'm just gonna sit back like this and read, except for when I want to lean forward and really get into the details. But okay, here's the scary things that I wanted to talk about. This is like this is not appropriate speaking music. Let's listen to something else before we begin. Let's just have one song to listen to, and then I'll continue the shuffle of the playlist. But okay, yes, happy Halloween. It is my Creepypasta reading stream, which I kind of wasn't really sure what I was going to end up doing for Halloween stream this year because October, as you may know, got a little bit messed up for me. And I ended up basically just playing Lifeline all month. The only 2 games I played this month, aside from Phasmophobia, was No I'm Not a Human and Lifeline. Very scary games. But I did decide that November is going to carry on as that's going to be my spooky month. I'm going to be the one still playing scary games in November because I missed my chance. But it's never too late. Nightmare Before Christmas, yeah, like that. And I've just been having a hard time deciding all of the stuff I want to play. I feel like this song's a little loud. Maybe it's not too loud compared to my voice, but I was like having trouble choosing, do I want to like just go into Signalis right away, or do I want to start by playing a lot of the shorter games? Playing the shorter games might be a good idea, but I want to play Signalis so bad, and I've been feeling like playing Resident Evil as well. I'm just gonna have to go with what I feel like on a whim. But tonight we are here not for video games, but for reading book stories. So creepypastas, I'm quite aware of them myself. I don't know, I would say that I enjoy them a lot. I'm mostly familiar with the really, really popular, not so good ones. Like, you know, Slenderman, of course. Although, does Slenderman really count as a creepypasta? Slenderman was like a character invented for some sort of, it was some sort of like competition or like event for people to make like scary Photoshop images. Hi, Yuki, hello. Whoa, I'm dead. And yeah, Sonic.exe, that was one. Yeah, a lot of the video game creepypastas. But creepypasta doesn't just mean, it doesn't just mean scary story about video games, even though there's a lot of those. There's a lot of original stories, and those are actually the ones that I have not read myself. I think I've listened to readings of a few decent ones, but not some of the like popular ones, so I have a list here. We might not even get through all of them, but there's a couple that had been recommended to me a while ago that I'd heard about, and a bunch of others that I found from Reddit. I am maybe a little bit uncultured when it comes to creepypasta stuff, but here I am. Okay. That's enough of this song. This song's too, like, active. What do I want to start with? Okay. I feel like there's more things that I could choose. Okay. We're starting here. I mean, there's more things that I could talk about, but we must begin. Let's get into the atmosphere. Turn all of your lights off, and leave your door open. I guess. Leave your windows open too, and let the bugs in. Well, maybe they won't come in if you don't have any lights on. This song is not from Haunting Ground. Oh my god, I forgot to put Haunting Ground music on this list. Okay, before we begin, I'm gonna put Haunting Ground music on the playlist. Who knows if it'll even get to it. It'll be on shuffle, but yeah. Haunting Ground. Yeah, I want it to be the environment music rather than anything else. Nothing too energetic. Okay. Well, let me restart. Refresh so that those songs are in the playlist. Alright. It's okay. Alright. Atmosphere, start up again. The first one that I'm going to read is going to be Candle Cove. I think this is a very famous one. I've heard about it a lot. I know sort of the basic premise, but I've never read the story. So here I go. I don't know. I've never done any sort of scary reading before. So estimated reading time 8 minutes. Well, let me read it. How do I? I'm on creepypasta.com. How do I read it? Oh, here it is. Okay, I have it. Okay. Net Nostalgia Forum, television, local. Sky Shill 33 says. God damn it. I don't know how to do this. It's formatted like a forum, which is cool. I feel like I should be showing you. I feel like I should be showing you what I'm reading. No. Okay. I'm gonna get into it. Okay. I don't know how to read. Okay. I'm just gonna read. I'm gonna play completely seriously. No more giggling. Even though I have to read like forum cat names. Okay. It's post by Sky Shill 33. Subject: Candle Cove local kids show. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found references to it anywhere. God damn it. Hold on, we're still scuffed. I forgot to change this. Okay. Candle Cove. Okay, start over again. Net Nostalgia Forum, television, local. Sky Shill 33, post. Subject: Candle Cove local kids show? Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike Painter 65 responds, seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove, was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Sky Shell responds, yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll, looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF, though. I don't know what that is. Jaren 2005 responds, sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Sky Shale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name, Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice. Skyshell responds, "Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden, smiling face, with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden/plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked." Mike says, "Haha, I remember now too. Do you remember this part, Skyshell? You have to go inside." Skyshell says, "Ugh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in. Like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside!" With his two eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw. And the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh. He just looks so cheap and awful. That's why that YouTube channel is called Local 58? You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin Hart joins the chat and says, "I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare fuel." Jaren says, "That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. Used to think that meant he only had one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette. The Skin Taker. Can't believe what they let us watch back then." Kevin Hart says, "Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of a kids show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape. And his glass eyes that were too big for his skull, Christ almighty." Skyshell says, "Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up all crazy? Wasn't that supposed to be children's skin?" Mike says, "Yeah, I think so. Remember, his mouth didn't open and close, his jaws just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, 'Why does your mouth move like that?' And the Skin Taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, 'To grind your skin.'" Skyshell says, "I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended. The show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically, and all just screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it." Kevin Hart says, "I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode." Skyshell says, No, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally, just standing in place crying and screaming for the whole show." Kevin Hart says, "Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to God I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed." Jaren says, "Oh God, yes, the little girl Janice. I remember seeing her shake, and the Skin Taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off, and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on." Mike says, "I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little, in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kids show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why. She said, because you used to think it was so strange. I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom,' and then you would tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show." So that's Candle Cove, I guess. I think that's the end, right? There's like analysis about... This might not be the original Candle Cove. But that was kind of, it was good. Yeah, I don't think I can analyze it properly. Yeah, the BGM played pretty nicely for that timing. I think if I had read this like way back when it, when creepypastas were like big thing, I wouldn't have seen this sort of trope enough times that it would probably have gotten me. I think it's an interesting idea. There's another story on this list, I think. Yeah, No End House, which is also featured in that. There's this show. What the heck is it called? Channel Zero? I've been meaning to watch that for years, but I think I just didn't know where to watch it or something, and I was just too lazy to find a way to watch it. And I think that show like adapted creepypastas into like television, like a short story format. And this kind of story, Candle Cove, that would probably work pretty well for something like that. I can imagine like a pretty good reveal. But yeah, that was it's iconic for a reason, I suppose. But yes, I've seen too many of these kinds of shows to get disturbed by it. But listen, next one. What do we want to do next? Been meaning to watch Channel Zero because everyone says it's pretty good. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about it. I just haven't watched it. Okay. Next, I think I'll just read No End House next. Let's see, is it also on creepypasta.com? That one was kind of cool, but jumped the shark a bit with the flesh rippers. Yeah, okay, there's that. And there's the ending. And then there's also like, oh yeah, man, this show was so fucked up. They had the skin taker who was like made up of children's skin. Like a lot of the stuff, like the descriptions of like, everyone that was like screaming and in pain and they were screaming and they were fucking screaming and the little girl was screaming and she was like, it was like it'd been happening for hours. It makes me think of like the Squidward suicide creepypasta, which is a pretty bad one. It's just like describing horrifying stuff in a way that's like not super interesting. I mean, this one is better than Squidward suicide. Because it's delivered in this format of like these people getting together and recounting a show that they remember. Trick or treat. I have no candy. I ate all of it already, most of it anyway. But yeah, I think it could be made in a. It's got good bones. Got good bones. Okay, let me look for No End House. Oh, I forgot to put this on shuffle. Whoops. We just heard a bunch of Silent Hill music in a while. Okay, I found No End House. Audio story? No, I want to read it. Is this it? 2011? What is this? Vampire's favorite Halloween candy? Is this a setup for a joke? I think... Yes. Oh, this one's estimated reading time is 52 minutes? Maybe I shouldn't read it? Okay, I want to read Russian Sleep Experiment. Is this also on creepypasta.com? Because Russian Sleep Experiment is one that I really wanted to read. This was a sucker, yep. This was for some reason it's caught by Autobot. Okay, we're going to read Russian Sleep Experiment next. Because Yuta, I think that you recommended this one. This estimated reading time 12 minutes. I don't want to read anything that's too long, so let me change the text. Oopsie. Oh. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, widely regarded as one of the most popular and widest spread creepypastas ever written. Well, let me read it. Is this where it begins? Okay. Russian Sleep Experiment creepypasta story. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber repeatedly, yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the... What the fuck? Why did my playlist end? Just start playing the internet checkpoint music. Is it because this is the last? No, loop my playlist. Loop my freaking playlist, dude. Just keep reading. Oh my god, that sucks. Okay. Anyway, the 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly. Sorry, I just want to make sure that never happens again. Researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you'll be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response: "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air immediately. Immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them were in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special ops at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times a human dose of a morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal. Breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point where there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word more over and over, weaker and weaker, till he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap of one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had 9 broken bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force his own muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly that they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. Did they mean impossible? Set of typo? One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and had fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. Did masochism? The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, a former KGB agent, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were to put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off of his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brain waves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering from brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit his pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep and flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as the one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. I won't be locked in here with these things, not with you, he screamed at the man strapped to the table. What are you? He demanded. I must know. The subject smiled. Have you forgotten so easily? The subject asked. We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out. So nearly free. And then there's a photo. I guess I'll share it since it's part of the creepypasta. So hello. Here it is. Here's the Russian sleep experiment picture. Appearance and origins, it says. Whilst there are a number of images associated with the Russian sleep experiment, and the story is an event of an event rather than about an individual or character, there's one image that is most well known and commonly linked to the story, which most fans will instantly recognize. Okay, this story ended. The image shows a humanoid creature staring blankly into the camera. The figure is horribly emaciated, a fact that is further emphasized by the extent to which the eyes are sunken. What the fuck? What are we talking about? A real photo? I mean, obviously it's a fake image. I don't want to see that picture. Anyway, it's a humanoid creature, emaciated, eyes are sunken back, brown cheekbones protruding in natural extent. The teeth, meanwhile, are of an unusually large size and forced forward by the thinness of the subject into a maniacal-looking grin. The subject's hugely exaggerated features, enlarged head, and huddled posture. Oh, I think I know exactly the image as they're describing it. With the concept of them being as much as victim as a threat. The image is in black and white, which lends it some authenticity, considering the period. You can make any photo black and white. It lends it some authenticity, considering the period in which it is alleged to be taken. Thankfully, the image is fake, and rather than being a human, it is in fact a photo of a Halloween prop. Yeah, I actually know exactly the photo. There's some disagreement as to where the story first originated. Some sources claim that the tale's first appearance can be linked back to a user known as Orange Soda. It was also worth noting that some other person said that they made the story, and then some other person said that they made the story, and some other person said that they made the story. Okay, so that was Russian sleep experiment. That was interesting. I liked that sort of idea. Actually, yeah, so there's like a few of these. Okay, where should I begin? I'll just say, I didn't get super like scared, but okay, one thing. Okay, I guess I'm gonna start with my criticisms. Okay, can I say that I really like this one, but after watching X-Files, I realized that the concept of it is kind of ripped from an episode. They just copied an episode of X-Files. It does it different things with it, but still is inspired. You're gonna like just spoil X-Files for me, and then when I watch it, I'm gonna know exactly what to expect. But so my criticism is that, so I think I really like this sort of idea, these like government experiment stuff, because I can understand why, you know, people might have thought that this was real, because there are real things that have happened in the world like this. Like MK Ultra is real, right? Am I insane, or it's real? I didn't think it was real because it sounds fake, right? But it's real, right? 200 episodes, I'll be fine. Okay. And there's other things, you know, World War II. There's a lot of horrible shit that humanity is capable of. So to think that there was, a sleep experiment where they put some sort of strange gas into a chamber of a bunch of prisoners of war and forced them to not sleep for days. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of thing had happened. Yeah, Weekend at the CIA. However, the, like, okay, MK Ultra is real, but a lot of stuff surrounding it is not. Okay. But yeah, basically, like, the way that some of the, if I were to be made to think that this is real, or like to be able to suspend my disbelief enough with the way that a story is written is very, very important, especially with horror, for getting the reader to be able to like buy into what's going on, like not to think that it's real, but like to get immersed in like the world, and you're like describing these horrible things that are happening to people. You can't even do human experimentation now because of woke. But yeah, so like I was getting like involved and like very disgusted by like when they first started to go crazy and like screaming, and because like seriously, the effects of not sleeping for a certain amount of time, you will die eventually if you don't sleep. Humans need to sleep very importantly. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do horror-wise with that. But the stuff about them like having these like impossible wounds, the way that it was written was not quite. It was described very matter-of-factly, which a lot of creepypastas do. You'll die faster from lack of sleep than lack of water. There's a streamer that spent like a whole week without sleeping for a challenge, and when he went to the doctor, he said it had holes in. Why would you do that? That's, I guess he didn't know. Oh my, why would you didn't tell me that? I know that we're on the Creepypasta stream, but I'm getting really uncomfortable. Sleep is important, so please sleep. Please sleep. Anyway, yeah, when it got to some, it's not real. Stop lying to me. Stop trying to freak me out. Anyway, I was just trying to say that, yeah, sometimes with writing, super unrealistic, especially in a short story, like super unrealistic injuries where a character's still alive, where it's supposed to be like somewhat believable, it kind of takes me out of it a little bit. But overall, I think this is a pretty good and interesting story. I understand why it's so popular. People love this kind of thing. Okay, what else? What else? What would be good next? What is Baraska? Is this one here? No, this is not. It's not on here. Pen pal? Maybe I should read Anansi's Goatman story? Had Teddy recommended this one? What if I just search Goatman? Where can I read it? Well, this one is about a bunch of different stories. What is goat? I need to find a place to read it. Someone 12 years ago says it's the most terrifying story that they've ever read. Okay, it's on Creepypasta wiki, but like... Alright. This is a green text. Says... Saved from 4chan's X on Friday, September... Fuck. Hold on. I forgot about my stuff. Okay. Nah, I'll put the full title. There we are. Okay. Alright. Added slightly from the original thread to improve grammar flow. Okay. Here's my story. B16. Be black and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting and camping. Down south, cousins suggest that we go there to camp. I know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Oh, they know. Yeah. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp, and it's obvious something is weird. Air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it, and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're out camping. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together because there was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. I'm going to stop green texting because the story is fairly long and the format is harder to write in. So we end up playing football, dicking around with me. There's the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17, and we ended up just dicking the day away. Eventually, we head back to the camp and pull out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls actually also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock and it's starting to get pretty dark. They grab flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property. The rest of us chill, we make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's a smell of ozone again. You could notice it over the scent of the fire we'd started. This really nasty coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it stopped. Wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or that someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing's on, but we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking it down the path toward us. Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. They don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer right by where the fire is. Excuse me. We all get the fuck out of there and into the trailers. They end up calming down, even Rooster's crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire's guttering lower and lower. So my other cousins say fuck it and are about to go outside to the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no, lock the front door. Ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too. His eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back. And that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. Rainy day drink. One of their pigs had been ripped up and half eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. Tanner went upstairs, packed his stuff, and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle, because coyotes avoid people. Then they started walking back toward where we were camping. Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but was now just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says that they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they'd started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail. They all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them, what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. They keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and there's a dude standing there too, backwards, slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going. I should have taken the fucking rifle. As they're telling a story, the smell is still super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had begun coming from both sides of the wood. As they booked it back to the trailer, the girl said she flashed her light out to the side of them and saw something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track. Then they just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We probably tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. You can get put on a register for jerking yourself through the woods. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of the Goatman or any of that. But then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a what is menom? Menon? Did they spell it wrong? Menon. For a roommate. And I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat. Yeah, duh. And he can shapeshift and get among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo. It's bad mojo to even talk about it. And even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going, the Goatman's going to get in and fucking get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or an animal. Fancy term for a philosopher? Well, I jujuled it, and it didn't come up with anything, so... I'm sorry, I started saying jujuled ironically, and now it's just becoming the way I pronounce Google. I need to stop. Why did this happen again? It went to the happy music. Stop doing it. It's when it gets to the bottom of the playlist, it doesn't loop the playlist. It doesn't loop the playlist. Please. Okay, let's continue. Where were we? Anyway, I'm trying to figure out if it's hillbillies or an animal. All of a sudden, the smell just goes away. To this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Obviously, smells usually fade away or lessen, but it literally was just there 1 second and not the next. So it's after an hour, making it around 9 or 10. We stop shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night. We stay another night, and for the main part of that night, nothing happens. But at about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. Someone is finishing some too spooky story. I don't remember what about. The smell comes back. It's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside and that this isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside and we're standing around. My cousin keeps going on about how it's the Goatman. My other cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. And all the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because no one wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. This is not appropriate music. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog, then get mine. It's like, is it bratwurst? Should I hire a DJ? After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the porch to get another one. He starts grumbling about how I got 2 brats and everyone else only got 1. And I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there were only 12 brats. And if he wanted more, he should just open a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with the rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get it out!" She's crying and shivering. And then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room and I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin and the girl just runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books it out. One of my cousin's friends asks us what was wrong. Start counting us. There's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There have been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. Then I realized earlier that I kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around having a good time, that you don't sweat the small shit. And you don't always keep track of certain stuff? I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us. That they had been there for at least a fucking day eating with us. What makes it worse is that I couldn't figure out who it was because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the Goatman. The girl kept praying to Jesus and we're all sitting outside. Eventually we get big ass sticks and go back to the cabin. But there's nobody in there. We count again, there's 11 people. We go back to the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened. The girl says that she realized too. And then when she was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard, leaned toward her, and said something she couldn't understand. So we were pretty much scared as fuck as we huddle together and I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she said she just wants to go home and that she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's, and I have to look up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously. I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle, says he's gonna be back. So there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m. he hasn't made it back yet. We're getting extremely fucking antsy. The only reason I stopped begging them to leave was because he went to get a gun. At about 5:30 or so, the one cousin that did stay says the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside and sure enough she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind the whole time the coppery smell has been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them, everybody. And these are the people that wanted us to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst. He's laughing at me and asking if I set this up. Jesus Christ, the music set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like late September, so it's still fairly hot at the time, but super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear big-ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. I stepped outside the door to tell the girl to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs it up into it, and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one, and put a guy there in the chair to watch Kira. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. Eventually the guy turns to say she's still there, and there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. My cousin is holding one of the girls. The other two are kind of giggling with nervous laughter. Me and the other two guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing." We go over to the door and open it. He stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kira standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked up around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't till he was almost halfway to the trailer that he realized she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He said he had just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open. When he got to the door and it was locked, he turned and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 7 of us in here, right?" And I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it had just slipped right back in. We look out the window and there's nobody there, so we recount. Then I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. Everybody says 8. I say, well, how many are here now? They all do the count and realize there are now only 7 people in the cabin. Dan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo in his rifle. He had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think he would believe him if he said it was the Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours and that in the morning we can all go back to his place. And his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified, but I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks I'm trying to be funny and prank them. She's getting really scared and thinks I'm not funny. He keeps telling her I'm not that kind of person, and she says, well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that the Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we get in a huge fucking argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger, because at the very least someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst something bad is in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now. And we are trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent. So we turn it off at about the time that Tan's cousin shows up. He was like 19, I think. Now the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin. He says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. Then he says, where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. She a little slow or something? He also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up the trail. We were all like, fucking nope. We asked him what the fuck he's talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail Tan had been using and found one of you's guys' buddies standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was look at him. Then she smiled, and he said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something, if she needed any help, but she had continued to stare. Eventually, he turned around a bend in the trail, but when he went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed she'd taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were full of shit, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says that when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it had kind of weirded him the fuck out, so he tried to keep her in front of him. But no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind. He smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually, it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he turned around, she'd been right the fuck up on him. He stepped back from her. It was at this point that he asked her if she was okay. If she wasn't, he offered to carry her back the rest of the way. She just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this shit's real, unless Tad is playing a joke. Which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. They load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed so I would shit myself for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turned into an actual gross blood-like smell, like cooked blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice. It sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fucking stop fucking playing." It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling for Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. That's some shit that I never realized until that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm when talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of the YouTube cats... One of those YouTube cats, that's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. No, they sent a video. I don't really want to click on it. I don't want to listen to the YouTube cat. I mean, you'll hear it too. Alright. Alright, let's listen to the YouTube cat. I know this video. I mean, okay. That's what's it's horrifying. Okay. Sounded like this almost just not funny. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So now I'm in full-on terror mode. We keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." It just keeps saying "in" or "let me the fuck in" for almost 15 minutes. Then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. Every couple of minutes, it comes back to the door and says something. Finally, the smell fades away at around 2 in the morning. Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door, walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river, across from the trailer. Sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. And then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like it. We can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line, and then starts backing up into the building. We lock the door, and we can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says something that had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, and was crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much that was how the rest of the night went. Literally constant screaming for the next 2 hours and shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair, watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else had heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped. He'd been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us, and that the guy had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He didn't want to try and shoot at the fucking thing and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting at and kill us ourselves. But shooting at us and kill every... He didn't want to kill anybody. So he just stayed awake all night pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak because from my perspective, nothing happened. When we woke up, I noticed that Tam was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin, said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys. He told us to just start walking, that he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path, and when he came running up, we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and looked in there. You're too stupid to lock a screenless window, and it was fucking up when he went in there. What? It was fucking up when he went in there. The screenless window? I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep, or slip up and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house. Then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking into the woods. That's the end of the story. Okay, hold on, Silent Hill. The story's over. I want to talk about this one. What should I listen to while we talk about this story? That was Anansi's Goatman. Okay. I really don't know what would be good. I like this track. It's more spooky, but yeah. Okay, so I like that story. It did make me feel a bit uneasy thinking about this creature. It's pretty long. I feel like it is... okay, I don't know where to begin. It's like The Thing, you know? It's like The Thing. It's like No, I'm Not a Human. And that sort of thing where there is a... you know, something pretending to be a person, and it's like good enough to convince you to the point where you don't... It creates a feeling of paranoia and like actual like real terror when you realize, you know, who it is or what it is. And I think a lot of things trying to do this sort of story, and it is perhaps maybe is it a little oversaturated because of Among Us? I don't know. The Thing is like such a great film, and I want to watch it again, I think. It's like that one episode of X-Files, it's like The Thing. Oh. So I really like this concept, and I think that it was like pretty decent, like for Creepypasta, you know. I like the main character. I like the setting. There's a lot of things I enjoyed about it. And the description of... Okay, aside from, like, the freaking, like, cat voice, I wish that the cat... I understand what they mean. When any of these creepypastas are trying to, like, describe, like, how something sounds, and then they attach, like, oh, it was, like, this voice from this video game, or, like, the like, animal, like, funny cat video talking, it takes me out of... It's, like, too... I'm like, even though, you know... I do think in this particular story, it works in a way of being like, yeah, if this was real, I could buy this person talking about it like this. But it did make me just laugh. Some other issue I had is there was a lot of like, basically just with the way that it was written, there was a lot of like repetition. I think that the story could be more streamlined. But the idea is great. And it is something, like, it makes you sort of like, it can stick in your head imagining something like that, you know? So, yes, I like this in ways a bit more than the other ones, because I think because it was longer, even though there was a lot of kind of repetition, there's also a lot of swears. You know, not that I'm anti-swears, it's just like there was, like, so much, like, like fuck like Vivsy Pop Homestuck pilot language. But because it was a bit longer and it allowed itself to set up more, it made the scary part a bit more effective, I think. So yeah, that was a good one. Thank you for the suggestion, Getaway. What if Vivsy Pop wrote a creepypasta? Okay, I want to read more. We've only been here for like 1 hour. But my hot chocolate has effectively just turned into chocolate milk. I should really get like a better drink for hydration. Okay, I think, let me see. What else I can find? I want to read the like sort of shorter ones. So, Infected Town case files. Is that like a combination of stories or? Actually, don't know. Freaking Ben Drowned is on here. Oh my god. What's the cabin getaway? Read X-Files Creepypasta, no. Cabin Getaway, let me read it. Stolen Tongues? Oh, is that another name for it? Ben Drowned is actually like the one episode of X-Files. Seems like it's not on creepypasta.com. How do I? Yeah, everyone's like, oh, this is the fucking creepiest creepypasta that's ever written. Data X Scully fanfics. It's on r/no sleep. Okay. I'm gonna BRB to get a drink. So see you in a minute. Is that creepy noises? Okay, what are we reading next? The cabin getaway, sure. All right, let us begin. Okay. My fiance and I are okay. Let's seriously. Okay. My fiance and I are from California, but her family lives in Colorado. so they own a cabin near Pikes Peak, way up in the mountains. After visiting them, they recommended we go stay at the cabin a few days. We were avid hikers and jumped at the opportunity. Colorado is very rich in Native American folk legend. Virtually every place you go used to belong to an indigenous community, and the few of them who remain keep the traditions and stories alive. Excuse me. Pikes Peak is no different. There are enough stories and gift shops to give anybody the sense that the land itself is alive. I don't know if this has anything to do with what is happening, but maybe someone here is from Colorado and could help us connect the dots. Faye and I are currently at the cabin. It's day 4. We were planning on leaving today. This is the track at the end of the playlist, so if we suddenly get, like... I just want my playlist to loop, dude. I just want my playlist to loop. Faye and I are currently at the cabin. It's day 4. We were planning to leave today, but things have gotten very strange around here, and it looks like we're going to be here a while longer. We have enough food for a winter, and the heater still is in stellar order, but the Wi-Fi is terrible at best, and there's virtually no cell reception. We feel isolated. I'll try to respond to comments, but the internet dips out for hours at a time up here. First weird thing that happened was the snow. There was no snow in the forecast, so we packed light. But on first night here, just our luck, a blizzard pounded the whole area. My little Corolla, is that a car? It's basically a brick of ice outside. There's no way I'm going to try to make up the 6-mile drive down the mountain to town. I blame myself for trusting Colorado in spring. After a day, Thursday, of lovely hiking and sightseeing, some really unsettling stuff started happening. When we returned to the cabin just before dusk, we found an enormous dream catcher dangling from a tree about a dozen yards from the back door. This wasn't the kind you're imagining, the kind you buy from a novelty shop. This thing was made from twigs and twine, and it's about 3 feet in diameter. Absolutely humongous. Neither Faye nor I were stupid enough to touch it. We're veteran horror movie fans, and we know that's how you get cursed. If the snow melts a bit, I'll get back out there and snap a picture of it, post it here. That night while we were eating dinner, we heard a bunch of noises in the woods outside. Twigs crunching, leaving leaves rustling, etc. This isn't unusual because we saw some elk and deer on our hike, but the sounds were slow and purposeful. They stopped and started and were rhythmic. Like someone was casing the area in a crescent shape around the cabin. I used my really bright tactical flashlight to look outside the porch, but there was nothing. We stayed in all day on Friday. Yeah, it's about to play freaking Spamton CD. Every time it gets to the last thing on the playlist, even though I have loop on, loop the playlist, it's like, nope. Why? Yeah, play a different... No. Why are you broken, dude? Oh, it's because autoplay is on. That shouldn't be a thing. I'm sorry. Let's go back to, like, Silent Hill. Loop playlist. Okay. We stayed in all day on Friday and just cuddled / hung out / played some of the board games we bought and some of the Super Nintendo games they had in the cabin. It was Happy Halloween. Donkey Kong Country 2. I have considered stealing because it's the greatest game ever made. It snowed again, and after dark, we started hearing more noises. Around 1 a.m., Faye woke me up and told me she was hearing a voice outside. I strained to listen, and I thought I could make out the sound of a man crying very far away, but his voice was drowned out by the wind, so I wasn't absolutely certain of what I heard. We went back to sleep, but again, around 4:45 a.m., we heard him more distinctly and closer. He sounded like he was calling for help, but he would dip into another language that I'd never heard before. We called the ranger station at the bottom of the hill using my cell phone, and they told us they'd get up there and check it out. We never saw them, and I doubt they ever came. On Saturday, shit got really scary. It snowed again in the morning, and I stopped getting service for most of the day. Faye and I watched movies and tried to Skype with her family, but that didn't work. She went to sleep very early, around 8, while I did some photo editing on my laptop in the living room. She woke up crying hysterically. When I asked her what was wrong, she said she'd had a dream that she was lost in the woods outside and something was following her. I cuddled with her until she fell back asleep. And eventually I drifted off too. Faye woke me up around 1 a.m. She was absolutely beside herself. I'd never seen her so afraid in my life. And just the look on her face really unsettled me. She told me that she heard the man outside again, but she recognized the voice. She was absolutely convinced that it was her grandfather's voice, and that he was wandering around outside begging for help. Faye's grandpa died when we were seniors in college 4 years ago. I told her she was dreaming, but then I heard the voice too. I never met the guy, so I wouldn't recognize his voice, but it did sound different from the night before. It sounded older. I had to do everything I could to keep her from running off into the woods looking for him. Eventually, she realized that the possibility of it being him was absurd, so he put a movie on at a good volume and fell back asleep. My cell phone wouldn't connect a single call. What happened last night, Sunday, was the thing that sent me over the edge. Essentially, the same thing happened. Around 1 a.m., at which point I was still awake, almost expecting the noise to happen, I heard a voice. This time, it was a woman's. Thankfully, it was distant enough that it didn't wake Faye. This is not appropriate music. Hi, Croy. I'm reading. Maybe I'm winning at reading. I don't know if my reading's been too good. I hope it's nice enough to listen to. But yes, where was I? Thankfully, it was distant enough that it didn't wake Faye. I walked into the bathroom and cracked the window open just a tiny bit. The frosty air that came through that crack seemed like a death sentence to me as a Californian. Nobody could survive outside for long in that, not without serious military-grade winter gear. And yet, someone was wandering the fuck around out there, stepping on twigs and crying. I am a reasonable, skeptical, sometimes arrogant, agnostic, but I'm telling you, the voice sounded exactly like my mother's. My mom is alive and well and living in Southern California, so my brain instantly cramped at the sound of her voice out here in the Rocky Mountains. I would know my mother's voice anywhere. I think we all would. And I'm telling you, I'm about 90% sure it was hers, which is way too sure to not scare the shit out of me. I grabbed my light and went outside with a blanket wrapped around me and my hiking boots on. I circled the entire cabin and looked around. There was snow pushed out of the way in a big, meandering pattern that snaked in and out of the tree line, like someone was drunkenly shuffling around. Maybe they were injured. The path went right up to the bathroom window, then back into the woods. Each time the voice called out, I shouted, "Mom?" or "Who's out there?" or "Who are you?" "How old are you?" "What is your name?" And each time the voice receded further into the woods. I'm pretty certain it was trying to coax me deeper and deeper into the forest, away from the cabin. I'm still alive because I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to die like some dumbass in a bad horror movie. I went back inside and made sure we were locked down tight. Since I can't call a ranger station, I'm posting this instead. I will keep you updated. Edit. It's Monday, and we got a hold of Faye's dad. The weather is supposed to clear up tomorrow, so he's going to come pick us up in his truck and help get my car down the mountain. I'll keep you all informed. Only one more night in this place. Try to get some more photos up. Edit 9:30 p.m. Monday. I've been able to get online twice today. I wish I knew more about electronics, but I'm a history teacher. Sigh. So I don't think I can fix the Wi-Fi or predict when it'll work. I can send/receive emails and some Reddit posts, but I cannot load some websites or view photos. Faye hasn't been feeling well since noon. She developed a stomachache and has been intermittently throwing up. We both ate the same thing and I feel fine, so I'm not sure what it is. She sometimes gets like this when she gets worked up. Although I'm an agnost/atheist, she is very Catholic and is pretty convinced that something supernatural is going on. No need for alarm at the moment. She does not have a fever, and I'm keeping her hydrated and in high spirits. She seems to be on the mend. Went to sleep about 1.5 hours ago. I don't know, an hour and a half ago. Some noises to report. Cackling/repetitive vocalizations in the forest. Probably 100 yards out. The tree line starts at about 20 yards out, so this sound is coming from much deeper. Some movement spotted just behind the tree line at dusk, but could be elk, deer, etc. Couldn't see very much, keeping all the curtains closed, windows locked, furniture in front of the door, front door and back door. I'm checking on Faye every half hour. Her dad will be here in the late morning to pick us up and take my car out. Another Redditor near us pointed out that I am an idiot for not double-checking the weather. You are correct. I promise I'll provide an update as a new post tomorrow, should anything significant happen. Archived posts, new comments cannot be posted. Wait, oh. Okay. Fucking... Wait. Is there another part? I followed this link from something else. Wait, which part is this? The mystery unravels? My fiance... Oh! Okay, we have a continuation. Last month, my fiance Faye and I went to her parents' cabin in Pikes Peak, Colorado, and had some extremely weird and terrifying experiences. Found an old dream catcher. The recap. We found an old dream catcher on a tree in the woods out back, and at night we heard a series of unsettling voices calling out from the forest. At first we thought someone was messing with us, but then the voices began to take on recognizable traits. Heard Faye's grandfather calling out for help. He's been dead since 2012, and my mother laughing. She lived 700 miles away. Faye got sick and began talking in her sleep, and at one point the voice of a woman outside began to repeat some of the things Faye was mumbling, as though they were communicating. I think I missed something. Did I miss something? What the fuck? No. Oh, I wish that I'd know. I wish I knew what part this was supposed to be. It doesn't say. Okay, we're gonna read the previous part. What, here's the interview I've been promising for so long? No. Oh my god, there's so many parts to this. I think I just went like in the middle of it. What the fuck is going on? What? This sounds like a different... Okay, I'm just gonna read something else. Which part is this? I actually don't know which part this is. Oh, it says part 6. Part 6? Wait, what? Hold on. Oh, that was part 1. Okay, this is long. I think this is a long creepypasta. Okay, oh my gosh, all right. Yeah, let's read part 2. I'm sorry for the delay, everyone. We are collecting ourselves. Sorry for any formatting issues. I'm writing this on my phone. Faye's dad picked us up in his truck. He brought his buddy with him, who was now following us in my car. A lot of things happened last night. Some things I won't share because I'm not sure how to interpret them yet. Not even sure I understand what happened, but here are the most important things. I also managed to get some recordings which I'll try to upload when we get home to California in a few days. I tried to stay awake last night until 1 a.m. because over the past few nights, that is the approximate time the noises changed from rustling branches to cracking to voices. I didn't make it. I fell asleep on the couch with my laptop open, waiting for the Wi-Fi to come back. I think this was about 12:30 in the morning. I woke up right around 1:15 a.m. to a muffled voice. In my sleepy days, I struggled to figure out where it was coming from. I thought it was just outside the living room window, so I sat there quietly trying to make the words out. It was a woman's voice that said things like, "A few days, it's not mine. I'm not alone, okay?" I got up and peeked out the curtains and didn't see anyone. But then the voice said, "It's my parents' house." And I knew the voice was Faye's. As I mentioned earlier, my fiance has an undiagnosed sleep disorder and has extensive sleep talk and sometimes sleepwalks. She has had pronounced night terrors since she was a little kid. I'll post a story on that someday. I walked into the bedroom to find Faye sleeping on her tummy as usual. She didn't say anything else as I came in. 2 things really disturbed me about this situation, though. The first is that she appeared to be having a conversation with someone, which is actually quite common for her. But the person she was conversing with was interrogating her, asking her questions about herself, me, the cabin, etc. Second, in her sleep, Faye was imitating another voice. It wasn't hers that she was speaking with. He was altering the pitch and tone to sound like a different person. My modus operandi is to not wake her up when she has sleep disturbances. There's a story behind this, expect one someday. Instead, I gently rub her back and hair, which calms her and puts her back to a restful sleep. I did this for a few minutes, but then there was another noise, off in the distance outside. I got up and walked to the window to listen, and I think this was the first time that I really felt scared enough that I felt like we were in real danger. It was a child singing in the dark. I couldn't really make out much of what she was saying, but I'm certain that it was a child, probably age 6 to 8, trying to sing a song. Good night, Zig. Thank you for coming. I hope that you enjoy baseball game. Bye-bye, and happy Halloween. The snow had abated for a while now, and the stars were notably bright, so I could see all the way to the rim of the forest, about 20-ish yards out. There was a figure standing there just past the first trees, back-facing me, looking up at either the moon or the tops of the trees. It stood so still that I had convinced myself it was a tree stump or something, and in a few minutes it was no longer visible. My skeptical nature compels me to be reasonable and say my eyes were playing tricks on me. When I turned around, Faye was sitting up straight in bed, eyes closed. She does this a lot in her sleep. She craned her neck and said something like, "Don't let them in," or "Don't let him inside." She was still doing the weird voice, so I woke her up. Faye and I sat in the bedroom with the lights on, talking about what we should do. I tried to get online to send an email to her parents, but of course it doesn't work when you need it. We agreed to stay in the same room and try to fall back asleep. At one point, I got up to get her some water. She hadn't vomited in several hours now and was feeling a lot better. And out the kitchen window, I saw flashes of pale light. They weren't like the flashes you'd see when someone walks through the woods with a flashlight. They were more like if someone had a lantern that they could slowly turn on and off. I flicked on the porch lights to the front and side of the house, hoping that it would discourage anyone from trying to approach. But as I walked back to the bedroom, I saw the distinct outline of a person through the window curtain in the living room and bright outside. I could see their silhouette. I read the wrong line. I saw the distinct outline of a person through the window curtain in the living room, semicolon. They were pressed against the glass with their hands on it, trying to peer inside. Since it was dark in the living room and the bright outside, I could clearly see their silhouette. I shouted and approached the window, but the person ran off before I pulled the curtain open. Faye slept soundly, but I continued to hear the voices outside, different ones, on and off all night until dawn. I wrote several of them down. I couldn't sleep, so I camped out in the living room. I kept the bedroom door open so I could hear Faye if she started talking again. The voices would go away for hours, and then start back up again. At one point, I fell asleep because I was awoken by the sound of a light switch flicking on and off. From the couch, I could see light from outside, going on and off in patterns of 5. I can't explain why this disturbed me so much, but it did. And I imagined some kind of horrible creature standing in my house somewhere, flipping the switch up and down and smiling. My first instinct was to check on Faye. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw that she wasn't in bed. I started calling her name and pacing around the house, looking out the windows to see if she was outside. When I looked out the kitchen window, there she was, sitting on the hood of my car about 30 feet out in the driveway. Her back was to me, and she was staring off into the forest. She was absolutely rigid, just the way she sits up in bed when she's asleep. Faye has sleepwalked all over the house back home in California. I found her in the kitchen and the downstairs hallway and living room, but she's never gone outside. I shouted her name from the kitchen, but the second I did, Faye jumped off my car and dashed into the woods at full sprint. She never looked back at me. I started flipping out and screaming her name over and over. I scrambled to grab my boots to go after her, but the second I pulled the front door open, Faye called out my name from behind. She was standing in the hall looking confused, asking me what was wrong. Apparently she had been in the bathroom. In my masculine crusade, I'd forgotten to check there. I looked out at my car into the forest, and honestly, the first thought that came to my mind was, "You clever motherfucker." Needless to say, we stayed up the remaining few hours until dawn, intermittently writing down the voices we heard, which faded away and became less frequent with the passage of time. I'll try to get the recordings up in a few days. For now, here's the list of the voices we heard. We recalled some of the voices from the previous nights from memory, but I just figured you'd like to know what was being said throughout the duration of this lovely cabin experience. I will return to Colorado, but fuck Pikes Peak. The question marks indicate that the words were very unclear. Okay, so first part is, a man's voice vaguely familiar but couldn't put a face to it over the past several nights. So things he said were, "Hello, oh God, look at it, look, hello," desperate. Don't, they see me in the dark," kind of wailed dramatically. I'm lost. What you, whoa my, growled hacking song, reminded me of Gollum, question mark. "It's very dark, I see those lights," shouted in anger. "Oh, come down there," shouted. Don't smile, I see you." Question mark? Could have been goat smile. Next voice is a woman's voice, sounded aged 20-ish last night. Gasp in horror / surprise over and over. Like that. Lay it on the ground and burn it or turn it. La la la, la 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 la. Oh, it says not monotone, not melodic at all. So like, la 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 la, la 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 la. She talks in her sleep. She's talking to me now. Threatening, malicious voice. Other voices. A child sounded about 6 to 8 years old. Crying or whining. I'm not going to cry or whine right now. Occasional laughter, like hee hee hee. Oh, soul me I do. Why do I do? Eat, eat, eat. I am a vacant / naked soul. Me I do you. Singing. Not sure if this is actually English or if my mind is just forcing the sounds into English. When do we go inside? When do we go inside? Very unusual intonation. It sounded like a robot trying to mimic a child. And voice of my mother a few nights ago. Stop! Oh, I was laughing / joking. She has a recognizable Bostonian accent. I cannot do that. Look at the windows. Did you see it? And the voice of Faye's grandfather a few nights ago. Lots of indiscernible groaning, calls for help. Something about the war. They's bodies still in the ground there. Never found them, but they're there. Right here, right here. Ooh, they found it. They found it. Oh, I'm standing in the same place. 20 years? Question mark? By the way, I forgot to check to see if the dream catcher was still out there up back. Welcome to drive out there and look for yourself, though. Okay, well, I'm invested in this. We're gonna read another part. It's almost been 2 hours. I'm worried that this is gonna end up being the whole rest of it. There's so many creepypastas that I could read. But, okay, I wanna just like pause to talk about the story. This is like really well written. These other creepypastas that I read, I know that I would get like so much more like invested, like creeped out if you know, at least for me, it's not just like grammar and spelling. There wasn't even really grammar issues in the other ones. It's the presentation, you know. Presentation is important. And this is similar in format to the other creepypastas. Like it's from the perspective of a person who's experiencing this weird thing. But something about like the way that they talk, also like the character himself and his wife. Like I'm feeling worried about his wife or fiance rather, and yeah, it really goes a long way. There was no Sonic creepypastas because those are scary. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Okay, part 3. Yeah, the whole series is called My Romantic Cabin Getaway. All right. There's a lot of parts of this. Like, I don't even know if we get through all of this tonight. Wait, what? Oh. Yeah, so part 3. Wait, so then, wait, what, like, what's happening? Wait, anyway, I'm just reading from the beginning. Okay. So that night, we sat down with Faye's mom, Laura, in her bedroom while her dad was watching the news downstairs. Her mom was so upset at the stories we told her. I mean, she was visibly disturbed to the point of being in tears. She kept apologizing to Faye and hugging her. Laura told us that they purchased that cabin from their good friend, Jennifer, I think, who moved to Nevada about 20 years ago, and that Jennifer and her husband had complained about all sorts of weird experiences while living there. Her husband, Tom, like myself, was found fond of hiking and exploring the woods, and collected tons of arrowheads and other neat trinkets he'd found on his travels around Pikes Peak. Jennifer started having dreams about Tom being dragged off into the woods from their bedroom. She had all kinds of horrific nightmares about him being skinned and pinned up in the trees like some kind of macabre artwork. Jennifer said that while Tom was at work, she would occasionally hear the voice of her daughter, who died in a childhood of some kind of bone cancer, calling, "Mummy," from the edge of the forest. Jennifer's doctors claimed it was the medication she was on and changed her meds. Tom got a new job in Vegas, and they basically noped out of there. On a lighter note, Tom hanged himself in the garage 2 years after they moved. No note or anything. Anyway, Laura, face mom, and Greg, face dad, only used the cabin as a getaway in summers. Laura never experienced anything beyond weird feelings while she was there, and she choked. I think it said, was supposed to say chalked. She chalked that up to all of the crazy stories Jennifer told her. Greg, however, who suffers from PTSD-related nightmares, occasionally experienced exacerbated sleep disturbances in the cabin. Over the years, he became reluctant to go there and claimed that all of the things he'd seen in Vietnam came back to him when he slept there. Allegedly, some of the people he saw get killed would come back to talk to him in his dreams at the cabin. Last time he stayed there, he woke up in a dream to find a few of them sitting in his bedroom with him, maimed, rotted, etc. He privately maintained to Laura that he also heard their voices in the forest, crying, begging, screaming for their mothers, etc. Oh, and guess what time he always heard them? Laura told us that she honestly did not believe there was anything really wrong with the cabin. He was extremely pissed and let her have it. It kind of ended our visit on a bad note. Later that night, I was up reading, and Faye was sleeping next to me. She always falls asleep before me. That girl could fall asleep on a pile of rocks. She started mumbling in her sleep, so I listened carefully, and here are a few things I heard her say. Never, never, never. No, I wouldn't. On the mountain. I can't. Why his name? We don't know you. No, it's Felix, my name. About 2 hours later, she woke me up by nudging me in her sleep and saying, "Tell the man in the hall to leave." This set me over the edge, so I got to go to the bathroom and get some water. Didn't find anything strange, had a very hard time falling asleep though. This morning we heard back from the guy who went up to the cabin to check it for gas leaks and carbon monoxide. At the behest of a few scrupulous Redditors, the guy mentioned that radon is a really big problem in some of these old places in the mountains. He is some kind of super badass handyman with all kinds of equipment. So he wrangled up one of the peak rangers and they went up to the place together. Apparently there were tracks all around the house, a dozen pairs of them, like a large group of people had been wandering around looking in the windows. All of the windows and doors were sealed the way we left them. When they got inside, some stuff was moved around. The silverware drawer was emptied onto the kitchen floor and turned upside down. The power was completely dead. The weirdest thing was that there was water all over the bed and on the floor, but our guy checked for leaks in the ceiling and the bathroom pipes. Nothing. Nothing had been stolen from the house, not even food. Some of the old clothes in the bedroom closet were strewn on the ground, but nothing stolen, like maybe someone was trying them on or smelling them? The ranger said that there were legends about the mountain, something about things that sort of act like people, but they come out of the old abandoned mines. Greg's friend couldn't remember the name the ranger gave them. It was in a native language. I asked Greg to ask the ranger about the sounds I heard, specifically the wachoo, 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 wol-by, and he said it's a widely recognizable chant, but he doesn't know what it means. Anyone here have any idea? No radon, no carbon monoxide, and no gas. The place is all electric. He checked for mold, but he said it was unlikely that there would be any all the way up there. He did say it's possible there's some kind of electrical problem, and that this can sometimes cause people to feel very unsettled and maybe have hallucinations. He has some kind of Geiger counter or gadget that detects issues like this, but it was broken when he tried to use it. I'm going to keep a close eye on Faye. She's still shaken up about all this. If there's anything left to report, I'll let you know, okay? Oh, update! Update on the 21st of April 2016. We have begun hearing voices outside of our home. Faye is really upset and feels that I might have exacerbated these strange circumstances by giving them widespread exposure online. I'm going to go dark for a few days and see if that helps. Don't worry about us. We have a few close friends looking out for us. They know the entire story. Hi everyone, just wanted to make a quick update as promised because Faye and I are flying back to California shortly. Faye is back to normal, feeling great. I watched her eat a huge plate of chicken parmesan yesterday. First thing I should mention is that Faye's father was very reluctant to talk about the cabin or the weird experiences we'd had there. He kept trying to change the subject and was generally in a bad mood, which is pretty normal for him. He's a really grumbly Vietnam vet and has been in the army since he was young. His personality is exactly the way you'd imagine it. Faye asked him bluntly, "If something is wrong with that cabin, why would you let us go up there in the first place?" And his response was, "Talk to your mother." Okay. Let's go to episode 4. Over the weekend, my fiance and I stayed in her parents' cabin up in Pikes Peak, Colorado. I made a no-sleep post about the disturbing events that transpired over the course of a few nights, blah, blah, blah. This is a recap. Sorry that this is long, but I want to document everything. Faye and I flew back from Colorado on Wednesday afternoon. She slept the entire flight, despite the noise, which amazed me. I can't sleep on planes because I'm absolutely terrified of flying. I'd rather stay another night in that cabin. Really? When we got home, I ordered a pizza and she wolfed it down. Her appetite has returned in full force, which is great news. I mentioned this in my original post, but Faye has an undiagnosed sleep disorder. She has pronounced night terrors, sleep talking, and occasional sleepwalking. The disorder lies dormant 90% of the time, but tends to flare up when she's under a lot of stress. If we're moving, if she's changing jobs, or if a relative dies, I can expect a night of horrifying talking and odd behavior. Needless to say, our experiences at the cabin have set Faye on edge. Although she's in high spirits, she's still afraid at night too. She's still afraid at night, and I am too. That night after pizza, she fell asleep on the couch while we watched Wedding Crashers. At around 10 p.m., the movie ended, and I turned the TV off. As I brought our plates to the kitchen, I passed by the stairwell and heard a faint noise from upstairs that sounded like a man sighing. I shrugged it off and woke Faye up. Huh? I'm sorry? I mean, maybe, I guess, like, I don't know. I guess you might just be like, oh, it was probably just like a house settling noise. That's like a logical thing to think. But when you've just come back from this, like, freaky cabin trip where people are, like, talking outside your cabin, I would be, no. Anyway, I shrugged it off and woke Faye up. We brushed our teeth and went to bed. Faye talked in her sleep a lot that night, and it started at about 1 a.m. I woke up to her calling out, "What did you do?" and "Do you need help?" and laughing. This isn't really unusual for her. She babbled occasionally, said a few funny things, etc. I woke up again around 4 and heard her talking, but this time she was doing something she's never done before. We've been together for almost 5 years and not once has she ever whispered in her sleep. And now she was whispering with her back turned to me. For a second, I thought someone was lying on the floor at her edge of the bed, talking back to her. This disturbed the shit out of me, so I sat up and leaned over her, trying to listen in the dark. The only thing I heard her say discernibly was shh. I asked her, "Faye, what are you talking about?" And she didn't respond. I said, "Who are you talking to?" And she replied, "Don't," and nudged me. Another unusual thing happened. At around 5:45 a.m., I woke up to Faye getting back into bed. She hurried into the bedroom from the hall and got back into bed quickly, making zero attempt not to wake me. First of all, Faye does not get up, ever. She sleeps like a dead horse. And even if she went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, which she never does, the bathroom is not down the hall, it's in our bedroom. When I asked her what she was doing the next morning, she claimed to have no memory of it. I spent all day Thursday thinking about why Faye was still acting weird. I was the one who found the dream catcher and got close to it. I was the one who interacted with the voices at the cabin. Then I remembered something. On our last night in Colorado, at her parents' house, Faye got back into bed at around the same time, 5:45 a.m. I barely remembered because I was half asleep, but the image returned to my head. She'd been getting up really, really early for a few days. So last night, I set my phone's alarm to vibrate, and I put the time to 4:45 a.m. In the middle of the night, Faye started talking again. This time she was doing the same thing she did in the cabin, changing her voice to sound like someone else. In 5 years, she sleep-talked a bunch, but has never whispered or changed her voice until recently. She said a few things, which I tried to commit to memory. La, la, la. More like a sharp exhale, followed by a day on or tay all over and over. He's still in the trees. Where were you? I looked for you. And, oh, it's time. Yuta, you've missed. Yuta, we're still reading the cabin Getaway because it's like, I gotta switch this song. Anyway, this story is really good. And it's really long. You'll get a recap at some point. I've been reading it for like a while. Let's continue. About the same time, I heard a noise outside, which sounded like an old man grumbling to himself about something. We live in North NorCal in a really woodsy town. So when you look out our bedroom window, there are tons of trees across the street. It was very dark, but I'm fairly certain I saw a man walking behind the first line of trees. He was too far away to be the one grumbling, but it is very unusual to see anyone over there this time of night. In fact, I have never seen anyone there at night ever. Looking outside required me to open the curtains, which lit up our room with moonlight. When I looked back at the bed, Faye was lying there with her neck craned toward me, her eyes crazy wide and fixed on me, and her mouth was open. She issued this really frightening, gurgly, drawn-out groan and flicked her tongue around. Oh, freak. Looked like an epileptic fit in slow motion. Faye has definitely opened her eyes in her sleep, but never like this. She looked like a fucking murderer. I got so scared I called her name really loud and woke her up. She was confused and asked me why I was at the window. I lied and said I was just closing it because I was cold. I didn't want her to know I'd heard a voice. We talked for a bit, but I'll skip that because this is getting long. My alarm woke me up at 4:45 a.m. and I laid there awake, waiting for Faye to get up like she had been the past few nights. She breathes very rhythmically when she's asleep, so I can always tell how deep she's under. At around 5:20, she sat up straight, swung her legs out of bed, and tiptoed down the hall. I followed behind. When I say that my fiance tiptoed, I don't mean like a child on Christmas Eve. This was robotic, alien, inhuman. She moved like a meth-addicted ballerina zombie down the hall and stopped at the stairwell. Her breathing never changed. I just stood there in our bedroom, poking my head out into the dark hall. Faye looked down the stairs, still standing rigidly on the balls of her feet, swaying to and fro slightly. She did some weird shit. She touched her face slowly for several minutes, touched the banister, touched the wall, flicked the light on and off a few times, all while maintaining her perfectly regular coma breathing. Then she reached an arm out in the motion of a bicep curl, stretching her fingers and wiggling them, then curling them, her hand and her arm back up to her face. I watched her do this motion for about 4 minutes. It looked like she was testing the limb, as if she'd never used it before, but then I realized she was actually communicating with someone on the first floor of the house. She was making a come hither motion. With full confidence that Faye was sleepwalking, I walked into the hall and leaned over the half wall that overlooks the living room. What the fuck is this song? I put it on, apparently, on my list. Okay, I walked into the hall and leaned over the half wall that overlooks the living room. It was totally dark down there. I couldn't see anything but the clock on the cable box. Faye stood there waving, smiling, making gestures, and then touching her face and pulling gently on her hair. I carefully ushered her back to bed and talked to her softly, trying not to actually wake her. She didn't resist. She never does. And went back to sleep without another word. I have zero clue what the fuck is going on. I told her this morning what she did, and now we have a doctor's appointment for her at 2 p.m. today. Okay, next part. Part 5, I think? Yeah. You don't have to read all of these former posts if you knew my situation. Okay, here's the recap, Yuta. All you need to know is that 1, my fiance Faye has a sleep disorder, been sleep talking, sleepwalking, having night terrors, and other frightening sleeping disturbances since she was a child. 2, we've been together for 5 years. 3, we recently stayed at a cabin her parents own way up in the mountains in Colorado, whereupon we discovered an enormous handmade dream catcher in the woods out back and began hearing creepy voices at night that mimicked people we knew, including family members who are dead. 4, my fiance's sleep disturbances got out of control during our stay, and she appeared to be communicating with the things outside at night. Now we are back home in California, but something might have followed us. Okay. I took Faye to see her doctor yesterday, and we hesitantly explained what was going on with her. I left out the paranormal stuff because I didn't want to get put in a ward. She seemed really concerned about Faye. Hold on. We've been listening to this playlist for a while, but I kind of wanted to, since we're just reading the same story right now, I kind of wanted to try listening to the Xbox dashboard ambience. Is this going to be creepy enough? I think this is fine. Wait, no, this is only a 20-minute long one. Where's the 10 hours? Yeah, let's just have this. Okay. This is our new BGM. Put on some Mario Paint music. Yeah, I took Faye to see her doctor yesterday, and we hesitantly explained what was going on with her. and left out the paranormal stuff because I didn't want to get put in a ward. She seemed really concerned about Faye, ordered a blood test, gave her a physical, asked her about her diet and drugs, medications, etc. Faye and I are both non-drinkers, non-drug users, and neither of us are on medication. She wants Faye to be evaluated by a psychiatrist next week. For now, she gave her a sedative at night and some anti-anxiety medication. She wants us to get some fresh air and get out of the house, so we're going on a hike today. A Redditor named Pixie Dix brought up the possibility that the child's voice outside the cabin asking, "When do we go inside? When do we go inside?" might not refer to the inside the cabin, but rather inside Faye. This really worries me because it corroborates some of the strange behavior she's been exhibiting in her sleep. I contacted the park ranger, who was pretty sympathetic to our situation, and he's going to get in touch with some of the members of the tribe who have experience with spiritual guidance and medicine. He's convinced that Faye and I have attracted the attention of the ones who come out of the mines. Lucky us. More on that later. Some Redditors have recommended that I test Faye to see if it's really her. So yesterday evening, against my wallet's advice, I took her to our favorite steakhouse. I only ever order one meal there. Medium tri-tip, house macaroni plus cheese, and a bottled root beer. Faye only ever orders one meal there too. The barbecue chicken sandwich with mac cheese and salad with ranch dressing. And a Coke. She drinks Coke only. Her blood is mostly Coca-Cola. Someone better be careful not to get diabetes. Faye took a long time deciding what to order, and ended up ordering a fucking New York strip. I jokingly told her to order for me too, and she said, "I don't know what you want." She also ordered water instead of Coke. Usually we have arguments over how much Coke she drinks, and I'm always trying to get her to hydrate better and just drink water. This was really unsettling to me. At the end of the night, when we were walking back to my car, I kissed her temple and asked if she still liked it when I called her Noodle. She said, "Of course. I've never called her Noodle in my entire life. Her nickname has always been Monkey Toes." Long story. When we got home, she cracked open a Coke and got on Facebook, which is completely normal for her. This threw me off. Okay. I haven't had a Coca-Cola in like 1 billion years. One thing that's been on my mind lately is the song the little kid was singing outside the cabin. For those of you who don't know, in the middle of the night at this cabin in Colorado, we heard a child's voice coming out of the forest singing an eerie song. I've been catching myself humming it almost every day. Ooh, soul me, I do. I asked Faye if it meant anything to her, and I sang it to her while she was sitting on the couch. After a few repetitions, she sort of went blank, like she was hypnotized, and just wobbled back and forth ever so slightly for about 8 seconds, then snapped out of it and said, "I don't remember that." Last night is when shit hit the fan. I haven't gotten a full night's rest in over a week now, and it's starting to make me feel over-emotional and crazy. Faye started murmuring in her sleep around 1 as usual, but I couldn't understand much of it. She sat up in bed, took the sheets off her legs like she was going to get up, but I grabbed her arm and asked her what she was doing. She said, "Tell them to leave." Her eyes were completely shut. I asked her, Who? Who needs to leave? She sat there for about 2 minutes, not speaking, just sitting straight up. I asked again, and she replied, "There's a man at the door." Then about 10 seconds later, "And a woman at the bottom of the stairs." Of course, this made every single hair on my entire body bristle. I got up and went downstairs, turning on every single light as I went and carrying my buck knife with me. Nobody was in our house. I looked in every single room downstairs and even in the backyard. When I go back to the stairwell, I heard someone stomping around upstairs. Someone had turned the light to the upstairs hallway off. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking up, trying to listen, but the noises stopped. So I walked back up into our bedroom and got back into bed. It was likely that Faye had gotten up to go to the bathroom or sleepwalked a bit in the room and went back to bed. I fell asleep pretty fast, but woke up again only a few minutes later. Faye was gone. I heard movement down the hall, so I looked out into it, and I saw Faye coming out of the other bedroom. She staggered down the hall towards me, then stopped, turned around, and walked back in the other direction. She did this 7 to 8 times. She was walking in almost the same way as the night before, standing really high up on her toes, her legs totally rigid, as if they were made of cement. And her arms were completely limp and flopping back and forth. It was extremely fucking terrifying seeing her move like that. She was totally graceless. It was like someone was testing out a human body for the first time. At the same moment, I heard a noise through the bedroom window and ran over to check, thinking someone was really at the front door. You could see down the front entryway from our bedroom window. Off in the distance, about 30 yards out, someone was walking back and forth in the exact same way that Faye was. He was humming loudly and intermittently singing. The song sounded like the one I sang to Faye earlier. The one this child sang outside the cabin. I made this YouTube video explaining what happened. This video isn't available anymore. I wonder if they did that on purpose. Basically, I ran back into the hall, woke Faye up, and brought her downstairs. I opened the front door to get a better look at the man, but he was gone. Today, at the behest of a few Redditors, I asked Faye if she'd ever been to the cabin before we visited it. I don't know why I never thought to ask her this before. She said nothing about it when we stayed there for several nights. She was hesitant to answer me, and eventually admitted that she'd been there once when she was 14. She and her parents went snowshoeing up the mountain. A few hours later, I emailed her mother and asked the same question. She told me Faye had gone to the cabin multiple times as a child, but stopped going when she went to high school. I can't figure out which one of them is lying to me. Because so many people have questions about Faye, she has agreed to do a filmed interview. If you post questions for her, I will film her responses and post them here in a few days. I haven't told Faye of this, but I'm thinking of going back to the cabin and meeting with the ranger. He wants to do some ritual with the dream catcher we found. If it's still there, and he says he will bring his friends and try to cleanse the house and the surrounding area, this will cost me like $500 just to fly out there. But if this shit gets any worse, it might be worth it. Edit. A Redditor sent me a private message telling me to investigate the guest room to see if Faye was doing anything in there. Turns out she was. She had written the number 4 on the window with her finger. I only saw it because of the condensation from the cold this afternoon. It's written backwards. I said number 5. Why did I say 4? I'm insane. It's written backwards so that someone standing outside in our backyard can read it. Okay. I'm just saying, I feel like one of the reasons why I'm so into this story. This totally is like something that would happen in Twin Peaks, right? This is something that would happen in X-Files. This is something that would happen in Twin Peaks, especially because of like the native stuff. It's very interesting to me, and I just want to see what's going on, you know? But I must keep hydrating. Okay. Next part 6. Okay, I cannot tell you how much all of your support has meant to us over the past few days. Faye feels so good knowing that people are constantly asking about her health. Where's Hawk when you need him? I feel like the park ranger guy makes me think of Hawk. I feel like a few of your suggestions have literally saved her life. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't even know where to begin. So much happened in the last 2.5 days. The sedatives and anti-anxiety meds the doctor gave to Faye worked during the day, and she has been less stressed. However, at night, her behavior is still highly unusual. I've taken the overwhelming consensus of Redditors seriously. That is a really funny sentence. Okay. I went out and purchased a bunch of child-proofing materials for the house to prevent Faye from harming herself or going outside while sleepwalking. I could not afford a bunch of cameras. Sorry, I'm a teacher. I bought these knob covers that little kids and hopefully sleepwalkers are too stupid to figure out. Outlet covers in case she tries to jam anything into them, and I hid the kitchen knives. I also brought in a spiritual healer after very carefully searching for one. I was going to ask the same as always, but does one really need to watch Twin Peaks to understand all media? I mean, not to like understand all media, but if you do watch Twin Peaks, you will probably be like, oh, this other thing that I've seen, it was referencing this or it was inspired by this. It is very much something that inspired many, many people. I wouldn't be a surprise if this person who wrote this creepypasta was also inspired by Twin Peaks. Anyway, where was I? I brought in a spiritual healer after very carefully searching for one. It is my opinion that 99% of them are frauds and hucksters, but this woman did not charge us anything, and she was recommended by close family. She is the daughter of a Shoshone, I don't know how to pronounce that, Shoshone tribal elder. The long and short of it is, she believes our house is not haunted. However, she says that Faye feels very off. She says she couldn't get a good read on her at all, and that there is a dark cloud over her. Still suspicious of this woman, I took her to a random upstairs window and told her that I had seen something outside near the edge of the woods, mimicking Faye's sleepwalking, which was true. But I pointed out the wrong window to the wrong part of the forest. She quietly examined the other windows upstairs and said that our bedroom window gave her a terrible feeling. No, the correct one. She said, he watches from here. She can hear him whispering at night. We told her everything. She was horrified by her story. The look on her face unsettled me so much. It was like she'd never heard of anything this bad. She went out of the room and had to collect herself downstairs. The woman prayed for several minutes, sang a beautiful song in a language I can't even begin to describe, and staged our entire house. She put some kind of crushed herbs on the ground in front of the 2 doors that lead into our home. Then she told me in private, you were dealing with the Hollow Ones. She said its name in her ancestral language, but I can't even come close to remembering / spelling it. She said that one is infatuated with Fae and will do absolutely anything to get inside our house, but the process takes time. I don't know if I actually buy any of this, but at least she didn't sell it to me. We also had Faye take a pregnancy test, as recommended by many Redditors. The woman said it was a good idea. Good news, she's not pregnant. And the woman stood in the bathroom with her like a prison guard so she couldn't fuck with the test. We then thanked the woman and she left. Okay. That night, we attached a little jingle bell from Faye's Christmas-themed lingerie to a hair scrunchie and put it around her ankle. I'm such a light sleeper that there's no way she'd be able to get out of bed without waking me. Horror story man has to rely on Reddit, basically. Faye fell asleep really fast due to the meds. Out like a light in a few minutes. I lay in bed thinking about the 5 she wrote on the window in her sleep a few nights earlier. And a reason that it meant 5 a.m. and not 5 days, as some Redditors had speculated. This makes sense because she's been getting up at that time to sleepwalk every night for 4 nights now. Since the 5 was written backwards facing the backyard, I reasoned that it was a signal to whoever or whatever was out there. She was going to try to let it inside. I eventually fell asleep, and I had a fucking horrifying dream. Something came into the house, through the sliding glass door to the yard, and walked up the stairs and into our bedroom. It sat at the edge of our bed, rubbing Faye's foot and staring at us. It was completely wreathed in shadow. I couldn't see it at all except for silhouette, just like the video I posted about what I saw a few nights earlier. I woke up soaked in sweat and couldn't fall back asleep for a while. 5 a.m. rolled around and the reliable little jingle bell woke me right up. In her sleep, Faye did something she's never done before. She stood up on the bed, rigid as a board, and stared out the window. I shouldn't really say stared because her eyes were closed, but she was alert. Watching, listening. She remained there like a statue for at least 5 minutes. I also didn't move, I just watched. Then she slowly raised her hand and started waving at someone outside. My skin crawled when she did that. She definitely knew someone was there, even with her eyes shut. Faye then stepped off the bed and darted to the bedroom door, trying to get out into the hallway, but the childproof knob cover stopped her. She couldn't figure it out in her sleep. She did another thing she's never done while sleepwalking. She got extremely angry and started pulling on the cover. She shrieked and growled like a trapped animal. After about 30 seconds of this, she woke herself up. She started crying really hard and told me that in her nightmares, she had seen a man without a face walking through the halls of our home, whispering her name and looking for her. I sat up and talked with her for an hour, then we went back to sleep. When I woke up again, it was around 10 a.m. Faye was gone. The bedroom window was open. As I walked downstairs, I saw her in the backyard reading. Every single window in the entire house was open, and it was like 55 degrees outside. She told me the smell of sage made her nauseous. She wanted to get it out of the house. I couldn't smell anything. I suggested that we go to the church downtown today to speak with a priest. She's Catholic. But she refused. So I had my buddy, Kay, who is a very, very devout Catholic, come over with some holy water and his crucifix. Apparently, Kay told his priest what was going on, and the guy very reluctantly blessed the water and told us to call him. Why has he got to be reluctant about it? A reluctant blessing. Faye was irritated that I'd done this without her permission and waited outside while Kay set up a few little crosses and a big crucifix around the house. Faye refused to have any holy water put on her. She kept saying, "I'm freezing, don't you dare." She's going to be super pissed when she finds out I put that shit in her shampoo and conditioner bottles. She was in a really nasty mood all morning, but after we went out for lunch, she was feeling better and agreed to film the interview video and answer questions from Redditors. While filming, I noticed that she wasn't wearing her engagement ring, and she realized she hadn't been wearing it in several days. I asked her where it was, and she said it was in our luggage, which we've now only partially unpacked. Later when I checked, it wasn't there. I'm worried about this for a few reasons. I will post the video as soon as she watches and approves it. She's self-conscious. Expect it within a few days. I finally began moving some more of the photos from this cabin onto my laptop too. I cannot bring myself to listen to those voice recordings yet. Since this is getting over long, flash forward to last night. I got up at about 1 a.m. to pee, and I knocked the bell scrunchie off the bed. Faye had taken it off, and it was gone. I got angry and scared at the same time. I found her sitting on the stairs, looking down into the dark, spreading her arms open like she was trying to get a child to climb the staircase for its first time. She was smiling with her eyes closed, as I usually do. I read that wrong. She was smiling with her eyes closed, period. As I usually do, I gently got her up and walked her back to bed. When I laid down next to her, she leaned over and with her eyes still closed said, "They're gonna kill you," and then licked my face. I called her parents today to arrange a flight back to Colorado. They're paying for it. Her mom, Laura, admitted to me that something had happened to Faye as a child at the cabin. This is where her sleep disturbance started, when she was 5. I've had enough, and they can tell. They spoke with the ranger at Pikes Peak again. It's literally a peak. It's literally a peak, by the way. Literally a peak. And he's arranging for me to meet with him and his buddies from the tribe who know the entire history of the area and all of the hauntings that other visitors have reported. Faye will be staying with my 2 best friends, R and Jay, and Jay's fiance, A. I've known all 3 of them since high school, and they are completely informed about these events. They will guard her with their lives. In short, I'm going back to the cabin alone. I'll update soon, but no matter what happens, I'm not going to drag this out any further on no sleep. I polluted this place with enough of my problems. Edit. Folks, I won't be at the cabin alone. I'm meeting the ranger and his friends there. His 2 friends are from his tribe nation? Sorry, I don't know the correct terminology. And they're healers. They know all about Pikes Peak and the ongoing situation. I'm not going out easy. Update. Dropped Faye off at my friend's place. They'll take care of her. Heading to the airport now. No idea when I'll get back on. We'll try tonight if I'm not too tired after landing. Update again at midnight in Colorado. I'm at Faye's parents. Exhausted. Talked to her parents extensively. Got word from my friends. Faye started feeling really ill. Wanted to go home. They've moved the whole posse over to our house, which has been saged / blessed / protected / covered in holy water and crucifixes. And she is allegedly doing much better now. Richard and Jason's fiancée Allison, are all sleeping over for a few nights to ensure Faye is all right. Heading to the cabin tomorrow morning to meet the ranger. Update, 9:45 a.m. Colorado. Leaving in 1 hour to go to the cabin. Sorry for typo. I said it was on the 27th by accident. Okay. 5:15 p.m. Update. Spotty bullshit Wi-Fi. Snowing like crazy up here. Met with the ranger. Investigated the cabin. Nothing unusual inside except a lampshade removed from a lamp, which he claims was not like that when he came in here a few days ago. His friends will be here tomorrow morning. I'm alone for tonight. I went outside for just a minute when it was still light to grab some things from the trunk and hear 2 voices. I heard 2 voices. Making short videos with my phone will try to upload. Another update next day, 9:12 p.m. So much has gone down. I am so terrified and sleep deprived. I'm writing a huge post right now with everything that's happened. I will post it tomorrow morning because I know I can't finish it tonight. I'm going to fall asleep in my chair. Sorry to keep you waiting. Bruh. Part 7. Okay. Why does this say it's part 4? Okay. I kind of have to pee. Whoopsie daisy. I'm gonna go pee and then I'll be back. What, is me peeing part of... Did something happen while I was away? I'm back. Hello. Let's continue. Okay. I have no idea if I'm gonna be able to finish this story. It's like so long. We're like not even halfway through the story. Oh my gosh, let's just try. Okay. So... Alright. It has been an interesting few days. I have so much to say, so I'm gonna try to be terse. Sorry that it's taken so long to report. I'm really trying. All of your questions and analysis of these events have really helped us through this struggle. Some of your observations are what brought me back here to Colorado. I landed in Denver International Airport 2 nights ago and stayed with Faye's parents in Arvada. While there, we all sat down and I basically forced them to tell me what was going on. A Redditor pointed out that Laura, Faye's mum, appeared to be lying/hiding something. Another Redditor asked me if Faye had ever been to the cabin before, since her family owned it for almost 3 decades. I had never even thought of this. When I asked Faye, she said no, and that her parents just used it as a getaway a few times a year. Faye's mom told me that she'd been there multiple times when she was little. This time, Faye's parents told me a different story. They claimed this was the truth. Faye had been to the cabin as a toddler a few times. When she was 5, something happened to her. While Greg, Faye's dad, and Faye were outside playing in the snow, Faye wandered off the edge of the forest to look in. She was following a voice. Greg was building a snowman and keeping his eye on her. They were only a few dozen yards apart. Allegedly, Greg heard Faye talking, answering questions, but he couldn't hear anyone else talking. He started walking toward her to bring her back, and he heard her say, "Faye, no, it's Faye, I can't see you." A moment later, little Faye began shrieking and crying. She went stiff as a board, and Greg had to pick her up and haul her back inside. She was almost catatonic and would go through bouts of total silence or inconsolable hysterics for several hours, until Greg and Laura decided to go back down the mountain and take her to a hospital. Greg claims he never saw anyone in the woods, never heard any voices speaking to Faye. The doctors thought she had an epileptic seizure, and to this day, Faye does not remember ever going to the cabin. When I took her, she acted like she'd never seen it before. I believe that if Faye did remember being traumatized as a child, she'd never want to go back. So I really think she's blocked out the whole experience. And when we visited it a week ago, she thought it was her first time going. In Laura and Greg's subsequent visits to the cabin without Faye, Greg experienced terrible nightmares in which dead people entered the bedroom, sat on the ground and bed, watching him sleep. In the morning, Greg let me borrow his truck, but refused to go to the cabin with me. He told me when I left, "We let you kids go up there because we honestly wanted to believe there was nothing actually wrong with the place." They used us to validate their denial, but I don't hold them responsible. I'd never have believed any of this if I were them. Dreams and a frightened child do not a haunting make. I arrived in Pikes Peak around 1 p.m. yesterday, and the ranger met me at the cabin. We investigated the place, and I didn't find anything unusual, except that a single lampshade had been removed, placed on the couch. We checked out the nearby woods. I was kind of surprised to discover that the creepy, enormous dream catcher was still there. The ranger told me he did not recognize it, and it was not something that his people made. He told me not to mess with it until his friends showed up. He told me he'd return with them in the morning and left. That night, some shit happened. Greg told me that he'd hidden a .357 Magnum in the closet, so I retrieved it, and a really dope-ass purple bathrobe, and felt a little better. Don't worry, I know how to shoot and how to keep it safe. Right around sunset, I walked out to Greg's truck to grab a few things I'd neglected to bring in earlier, and I heard 2 distinct voices chattering in the woods. It was snoring like crazy, and the wind was howling, but above the storm I heard a gruff masculine voice and a younger adolescent male voice. They were both yammering incomprehensible gibberish from 2 different places. I hurried back inside and locked the door. The stuff they were saying was pure madness. It made no sense. "Put them up there in the trees, and take, walk on down there, go ahead." And I just sat there imagining psychotic cannibals jabbering with their tongues hanging out and eyes rolled back in their skulls. I figured they'd come out of the woods as soon as it was dark. I tried to reach out to Faye back home, but my phone wouldn't get any reception in the cabin. The storm was too strong. I tried to play video games on the SNES, but I was so distracted by all the sounds outside. Every single noise the blizzard produced caught my ear, so my imagination manifested all kinds of horrifying creatures slinking around out there in the dark. When I finally went to bed, the wind died down a bit, and I heard a few more voices. There was a distant high-pitched wail that echoed across the entire mountain. There was a child crying, saying something like, "Put me down in the hole, and it's so deep you can crawl forever." But his voice sort of glitched. It would suddenly become deeper, as though a grown man were doing an impression of a little kid. I also heard someone hacking and vomiting and crying, begging for help. I didn't fall for any of it. I'm 28 years old, and this is the most afraid I've ever been in my entire life. Even with Faye walking around like a fleshy marionette and calling out to a presence in the dark of my own home. Around the time I was getting into bed, approximately 45 past midnight, there was a gentle tapping on the sound on the window in the living room. It was soft like a neighbor who was reluctant to bother me. I stood there in the bedroom with the wood door open, holding my breath, trying to figure out if I'd imagined it. Then I heard it again, so I crept down the short hall and peeked around the corner, just in time to see a figure walking past the windows and toward the front door. With the curtains drawn, I couldn't make out anything but a big shadow. Then it knocked on the door. It was a gentle knock. A man's voice called out softly, "Hello?" I just listened intently, tried to keep silent. Eventually he knocked again and said, "Hello? I need to speak with you." He was speaking through clenched teeth. He was either extremely cold or extremely angry. I very carefully stepped back into the bedroom to grab the gun, but the goddamn place is so old the doors creak. I barely tapped the bedroom door as I passed, and it squealed like a dying pig. Then the man outside said, just above a whisper, "I know you're there." For just a moment, in my lethargy, I considered the possibility that this was one of the ranger's friends. Maybe somebody else who lived on the mountain. I was never going to open the door, but stupidly, I figured talking to it couldn't hurt. I said "it" because I immediately stopped believing there was a human being on the other side of the door the moment I opened my mouth. I said, "Who the fuck is it?" as assertively as I could. The second I stopped talking, whoever it was out there repeated my question, while mimicking my voice accurately. It almost sounded like an echo. Then he said, "May I come in? Please?" His voice was a little shaky, but it definitely sounded like me. Unnervingly similar to me, but he was still clenching his teeth, so I could hear the difference. I pointed the gun at the door. It was dark in the house, so he couldn't see what I was doing through the curtain, and said, "If you don't get the fuck out of here right now, I'll blow you in half." For those who don't know what a 3.75/5.57 can do to a person, a slug to the chest essentially makes you into a human milkshake, and that's after passing through 2 inches of oak door. We just both stood there for dreadfully long minutes. Started testing out my voice. 6'7". I don't know what the fuck 6'7" is. I don't know what it is, and I don't want to. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to gain any new information in my head ever. Anyway, he started testing out my voice, groaning and whispering and muttering. He said a lot of things, but I only remember a few of them. "What's your name? What's your name? A little cabin for the weekend. For the weekend. For the..." They're lying. The ones out there. La 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 la. You aren't alone in there, and I'm not alone out here. What's your name? And you go up in the trees or down in the hole. That's where you go. Oh, they'll find you either way. The sound of my voice making these horrific noises and phrases set every inch of my skin on fire. I can hardly describe the physical sensation of fright this intense. It was almost like having a bad fever, hot and cold and wet and sticky all at the same time. I shouted for it to leave and said I was armed. I considered firing off a round, but that's a decision you can't take back. And my number one rule is to only fire when I'm certain I've got a target and a clear reason. I'm proud to say that I can use my voice a lot better than whatever it was that mimicked me. I'm a soft-spoken guy, but it came down like a fucking hurricane screaming, "I will fucking kill you." He replied simply, in a softer tone of my own voice, "I will fucking kill you." Then it went back to babbling gibberish and knocking politely on the door over and over and over. After another minute or two, it suddenly stopped. The last thing it said was, "I know where she is." Then it kicked the door, and I mean harder than any human could possibly kick a door, and ran off. The boom was so loud, I couldn't believe the door didn't implode in its frame. The person or thing bounded down the wooden patio and off into the snow, and I swear on my life and honor, it sounded like a horse or some other huge four-legged animal charging off into the woods. Child's laughter rang out, and then everything was silent. Look, I'm too reasonable to stay alive. Needless to say, I remained in a cat-like state of delirious paranoia. Is that what cats do? Do you mean catatonic or cat-like state of delirious paranoia. I TF'd into a cat. The storm picked back up, and I did not hear anything else. I spent the whole night debating whether the thing at the door was talking about Faye. I tried to convince myself that it was just yammering more nonsense like all the voices I've heard up here, but the way it spoke that sentence haunts me even now as I write this. Its voice, my voice, was purposeful and restrained. I chose the words carefully. It chose the words carefully, and it knew exactly what to say. Cats are pretty paranoid. I've been thinking a lot about what Redditors have been saying about Faye and being some kind of doppelganger. When I first saw the nude woman on my car, I thought it was a trick to lure me into the woods where the voices lie. I thought the real Faye stopped me from leaving the cabin, but many of you have pointed out that the reverse could be entirely possible, given how the Faye I took home to California is behaving. Given how she has failed all of my tests, and given how her engagement ring has been missing since we got home. So I sat there for hours, considering whether I should go out into the woods during broad daylight to search for my fiancé. Of course it is a stupid idea, but now I understand why people in horror movies do idiotic things. If I'm not looking for her or for answers, why am I here? I need to know what I saw that day in the driveway. I need to know if there are many voices or just one, and I need to know how to get all this back to normal. I listened to music on my iPod and desperately tried to distract myself by reading news articles online until daybreak. Most of them wouldn't load because the gods of internet have cursed this cabin. Around 4 a.m. I got up to get some food from the kitchen, and I opened the window curtain a tiny bit to see if anything was going on outside. A ton of snow had fallen. At the rim of the forest, dozens of yards out, I could see a distant figure standing perfectly still in the moonlight. He was facing away, staring off into the darkness of the woods. I checked on him every 20 minutes since then. He never moved. When the sun rose around 6:15 a.m., he was gone. I never saw his face. Today, the ranger and his 2 buddies came to the cabin, as promised. They were instantly likable and warm. One of them, Getaway, is a medicine man in his 60s and was especially cool. The other was his son, Nathan. He was probably just a few years older than me. They told me all kinds of interesting lore about Pikes Peak and surrounding areas, and then proceeded to tell me a disturbing story that they believe explains the strange activity on the mountain. For the sake of brevity, I will relay this in my next post. Aww. The ranger gave me one of his facility's satellite phones to stay in contact with him in case of emergencies. I used it to call Faye, but she didn't answer. So I called Jason and Richard, who are presently caring for her. Apparently, Faye had become inexplicably outraged after taking a shower, threw an enormous tantrum, and locked herself in our bedroom. She refused to, she doesn't want to get touched by water for some reason. Or was it specifically the holy water? Did she know somehow? Because he put holy water in her shampoo and stuff. She refused to eat for the rest of the night. Allison and Jason slept in the guest room, and Richard slept on our couch downstairs and worked late on his commissions. He's a digital artist. Oh. He told me that around 1 a.m., the same time I had my visitor, Faye ran downstairs into the kitchen, eyes closed, and started drinking out of the sink faucet. Then she turned around and stared, eyes still shut, at Richard while he sat at the breakfast table. She said, "Felix," to which he replied, "He's in Colorado, Faye, remember?" And then she said, "We sent him there to die." Then she sat down right there on the kitchen tiles and went back to sleep. Demon gets owned by holy water would be pretty embarrassing for the demon. Oh, she got a little mad. I've instructed my friends only to wake Faye if she does anything serious, so they observed my rules and got her back in bed without much of an issue. For all the crazy shit Faye does when she's asleep, at least she never gets violent. The guys put her back into bed easily enough. Next day, Allison bailed on the whole project. She said she was awake all night, listening to Faye whispering through the wall. Faye told Allison about how there was a man in the house and he was asking about her. My flight home is the day after tomorrow, so I'm going to have to figure all this shit out real quick. I'm going to take a nap. It's nice and bright outside. No voices. Good night. P.S. As soon as I get home, I will put up the Faye video. I know I keep saying this, but I really did not expect to suddenly return to Colorado. I swear I will put it up. And that will be the end of it. I resent myself for turning this into such a long and ridiculous blog of my experiences. Well, dude, next part. Let's go. Okay. My first night back at the cabin was the most terrifying experience of my life. You can read about it here. We read it. Next morning, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Lore and legends. They told him the lore. Let's read the lore. After I take another sip of apple juice, I probably need to get another drink soon. T-Way is an incredible storyteller. He told me that Pikes Peak and the surrounding area was inhabited by the Ute, Manito, Arapaho, Pueblo, and Anasazi, and other Native American groups at various times. In the 1860s, when the gold rush was in full swing, many Indians were violently displaced because of mining operations there. They were torn away from their sacred lands, which was catastrophic to their cultures. T-Way stressed that historically Americans have not understood the significance of land and names to Native Americans, and this is critical to understanding the supernatural presence on the mountain. The major world religions like Christianity and Hinduism and Islam are universal. They can be practiced anywhere. You can pick up your whole life and move to Kentucky or Scotland or Istanbul, and you'll still be whatever religion you are. Your God still hears your prayers, and he still intervenes in your life. But Native Americans practice land-based religions. The land they inhabit is a part of their creation stories. It's not that the land belongs to them, it's that they belong to the land, and both are in a symbiotic relationship with one another. History is embedded in the landscape. A person is reminded of specific lessons and wisdom when they see a part of the land. The mouth of this river has a story attached to it. That fallen tree has a story attached to it. A battle was won here. A chief died there. Peace was made between tribes with a feast here. When a native group is forced out of its homeland, the people lose their history. What's worse, they leave behind the places where their dead are buried. Since the dead are bound to that place, the Indians who no longer have spiritual connections to their ancestors. It's late, okay. The Indians who left no longer have spiritual connections to their ancestors and thus to their gods. Their medicines and magic no longer work. They forget the names of the sacred places. As the names and histories and wisdom are forgotten, the tribe's spiritual power evaporates. T-Way said that when Pikes Peak was taken, a group of disgruntled Utes descended on the miners and slaughtered a bunch of them. Because a complex network of alliances and peace treaties, these Utes were punished by another tribe. They dug holes in the ground and slit the Utes' throats. Then they buried them upside down in the holes with their legs sticking out of the ground so that wolves would feast on their calves. That was supposed to be the end of it, but then something else happened. Legend says that these dead Utes arose from the tainted ground one night. Because their flesh had been flayed from the hips down, they looked like walking skeletons. They hobbled into the Arapaho camps and took women and children back up the mountain. They forced them deep into one of the mines, never to leave again. The howls of women and children have been reported on the mountain for over 100 years now. The Utes and Arapaho engaged in blood feuds, sometimes called mourning wars, for years over this. They exchanged curses, executed and skinned and tortured each other. They stained the once sacred earth on Pikes Peak with rivers of blood. I was pretty mortified by this story. I just sat there with the ranger while T-Way and Nathan blessed the cabin. They burned sage and tobacco inside and outside, and used crushed herb dust to cover their hands. They made a handprint on every window and drew small symbols in ash at the top of the front door inside and outside. They gave me bundled sage and cedar and hawthorn, told me to burn it if anyone tried to get inside. It drives bad spirits insane. Oh. Then they provided me with small pouches filled with herbs and blessed objects to wear around my neck and in my pockets whenever I went outside. Nathan gave me a totem that he wears around his neck and told me to give it to Faye. Then they sang a really incredible chant in their language. It lasted about 15 minutes. I was blown away. I fucking love these guys. Then we went inside. I showed them the dream catcher, and they told me that they had never seen anything like it. The dream catcher is made with 3 branches woven together with hair, and it has old yarn or wool string with glass beads crisscrossing the center in a pattern. It is old and handmade. Teammate told me not to touch it or move it. If you find an object of power and do not know who made it or what it protects, you should leave it alone. I asked him if it could be evil, and he said, maybe. I got them up to speed on everything that has happened. I said that a lot of my friends, Redditors, but I didn't explain that, suspected that Faye at my house in California was a duplicate, and that the real Faye was somewhere in the woods. T-Way and Nathan disagreed with each other on whether or not that could be, but we searched the woods looking for signs of Faye, signs of my Faye. We found nothing, told them about the missing ring, and they said exactly what many Redditors have said. If Faye loved the ring and it was powerfully symbolic to her, it could be used by the bad spirit to harm her. They told me to find it at all costs. They also told me that if Faye indeed were here on the mountain, she was certainly dead. In the moment we've all been waiting for, Tiwei named the creature that was tormenting us. He said his people called it Atan Anotokua. I don't know how to pronounce it. The imposter. Listen, this was written in 2016, I think. So. Or 2019. Bad spirits inhabit the land everywhere, and sometimes they get the opportunity to use a tragedy like the Pikes Peak massacres to commandeer a human figure and walk the earth partly mortal. In this case, of the imposter. They collect animal and human parts piecemeal wherever they can and stitch them together. This is why they walk strangely, vocalize strangely, and when they never show their faces or come out during the day, they cannot pass for humans. I asked Tiwei why I always see someone facing away from me at the edge of the forest, and he said it is because they do not want me to know its identity. But eventually, the imposter would come for me, wearing face, skin, and teeth and hair, try to convince me that it was her. Hold on a second. When I asked him what it wanted, he said, nobody knows. He also told me that there is power in names, as many Redditors have stated, and that I should not speak its name, especially not to it, because that could provoke it. Of the voices I was hearing in the forest every night, Tiwei said, they practice what they hear for decades. It makes it easier for them to hunt. Excuse me. This section is called The Freaky Shit. Tiwei, Nathan, and the Ranger left at sunset. And I spent the rest of the evening thinking about all of this. And I think I figured out a lot of things. Around 9 p.m., something disturbing happened. I used the satellite phone the ranger gave me to call Faye. She actually answered and was just lying in bed reading. We had a great conversation. I told her I missed her so much, and that I was up here trying to solve what was happening. I told her I wanted to have a family with her. She said she was feeling better, and had actually gone a whole night without sleepwalking or terrifying Jason and Richard, my buddies who were looking after her. I love it so much when he says Redditors like these scholars. Yeah, kind of. It reminds me, like, this is a good story, but it does make me think a little bit of the movie Unfriended, when the girl was like basically doing the exact same thing when she was trying to figure out what was going on with the ghost, and she was like treating these like online threads as gospel. Okay. After about 15 minutes of talking, I started hearing sounds outside. I heard footsteps crunching in the dry snow, and I heard a voice, my voice. It said things like, flight, insomnia, miss you, see you soon. The thing had been standing near the window, mimicking my conversation with Faye. I told Faye I'd call her back later, and hung up the phone. They went silent. The thing walked around the cabin slowly, trying to figure out if I had moved, kept mumbling and repeating a few phrases as it went. Finally, it came and knocked on the door. Its knock was gentle, just like last night. I was a little bit less scared because of all the blessings Tiwei had put on the cabin, but I still held on to the gun just in case any shit went down. He spoke to me in my own voice, and the first thing he said was, the hole will fill with snow and blood. So yeah, that amped up my fear quite a bit. Every hair on the back of my neck bristled. Do you know the feeling of being so scared that your vision turns hyper-real? Not really. Everything looks like a realistic video game? So everything looks slightly off? I mean, this has never happened to me, I think, so I guess I don't know. Hello, may I come in? It said after knocking again. I simply said, no, leave. Then it knocked for another 30 seconds or so and said, what is your name? What is your name? Hello? I lied and said, my name is Daniel. Now leave, you can't come in. The thing started knocking harder, a lot harder, nonstop, and said, what is your name? What is your name? It was terrifying to hear my voice coming from the other side of the door and to hear rage building in that voice. I said again, my name is Daniel. But the thing just kept yammering and asking the same question. It would occasionally say things like, ticket, rental car, you go up in the trees, the hole, down in the hole. What is your name? May I know your name? Then I had an idea. I'm really good with accents. And when I was a child, my first language was German, okay? Dad immigrated to Boston and met my mom. And I started speaking in a thick accent, talking about my day. And then started shouting in German. I recited a poem I know by Hermann Hesse. Die Frauen von Ravenna Tragen. My visitor went silent and stopped knocking. I could tell it was just listening. So then I started shouting in a British accent, reciting lines from V for Vendetta, my favorite film of all time. I shouted, "Thank you," in every single language I know. And I once committed to learning it in 100 languages. I like this new superpower that my character just unlocked. My unwanted guest just sort of stammered a little bit, trying to mimic me, but failed to do so. I was no longer speaking any recognizable pattern or tone. Eventually, it just started growling the sounds Faye and I heard in the forest when we first stayed in the cabin. Wachu, bol mai, and started scratching and pounding on the door. This was he omnilingual? Oh, there's a hair. Dude, something that happened to me today. There was a hair in my coffee. I don't know whose hair it was. Maybe it was mine. Maybe it was Barney's. I don't know, but it was disgusting. And I, basically spat out my coffee all over my blanket. Anyway. I don't know if the thing outside could smell it. Wait, no, I grabbed a sage bundle and torched it with my lighter, then waved it all around the door frame. I don't know if the thing outside could smell it, but it walked off the porch all pissed off, growling, and went off into the night. This time, I ran to the window, tried to get a glimpse of it, but all I could see was a very dark, amorphous form disappearing into the trees. I think I figured a lot of stuff out. I think this entity is mimicking me because it's going to try to convince Faye that it is me. It is rehearsing my voice and then whispering to Faye while she sleeps, talking to her in her dreams, trying to get her to let it inside of our house. I think it wants to convince her that I am the imposter, not it. I think I also figured out why the voices go crazy at night and why they're getting closer to my home. These fuckers aren't trying to scare me, they're trying to deprive me of sleep. If I'm psychologically and emotionally drained, I'm weaker. If I'm delirious, I'll make a mistake. Their, or his, attempts to get to me will be easier. I'm still trying to figure out how controlling Faye, like a puppet in her sleep, plays into all this. I know what I saw. There was a man standing outside our house, walking the exact same creepy way Faye was sleepwalking, at the exact same time. I'm also still considering the possibility that I made a terrible mistake already, and that the imposter has already won. When I went outside on the first night at the cabin with Faye, trying to see where the voices were coming from, I left the door unlocked. They shouted out a very specific Reddit user here, saying that this person said that was the moment Faye was getting replaced by something else. I just don't know what to think, but for now, I'm going the fuck to sleep. Update. Well, I found the ring, sad face. Well, now I need to see the next part of the story. Part 9. We'll read at least up to part 10. How about that? That'll be halfway through the story, and then maybe another time I can finish it. Update. I'm out of the cabin and safe. Do not go to Pikes Peak looking to be a hero, looking to find the mines or looking for me. You will die. Avalanches, radon gas, mine collapses, etc. Do not be a fool. Edit. I took down the photo of Faye because someone started sending me creepy messages about it. I should have known better. Someone gilded another one of my posts. Oh, the fucking Reddit gold. Okay, let's continue. There are so many new developments, it's hard to figure out how to cram it all into a 3,000-word no-sleep post. The morning after I spoke with my fiancée Faye on the satellite phone, and then was visited by the thing that mimics our voices, I got a call from Richard and Jason. In case you don't remember, they are my two best friends, and they're staying at my place and taking care of Faye while I'm gone. They're the only people I trust. Shout out to that kind stranger for the gold. Richard stays up very late and sleeps in the morning. Kind of like what I'm doing now. He does this for two reasons: to work on his art commissions and to make sure Faye doesn't stab everyone to death and burn the house down in her sleep. The guys report that she's behaving quite normally and feeling good or being productive during the day, but then at night she's unpredictable and weird. I feel like her soul is being cleaved in half. The two distinct sets of behavior are drifting farther from each other each day. Around 1 a.m. that night, Richard heard the voices of a young child mumbling incoherently. He's up to speed on all the unusual experiences that have plagued my fiancé and me, so he immediately got up to investigate. He looked out the kitchen window, which faces the same part of the woods where I saw the man mimicking Faye's sleepwalking movements. Richard didn't find anything, so he walked a circle around the house and realized that the sound was coming from our bedroom window. He went inside and woke Jason up, and they stood outside the bedroom window listening. They claimed they heard the distant sounds of a child whispering and softly giggling, and I bet you can guess which song. The old soul song. The one that Faye and I heard outside the cabin on our second night. Both of these dudes are super ripped climbing enthusiasts, and they said they had never been so creeped out in their entire life. You know, men who work out and are strong can have feelings too, okay? So, like, don't be a dick about it. It's a crazy frog. Jason knocked on the door and said, "Faye, who's in there?" And he promptly heard the child go shh and whisper something inaudible. I have a little bit of like congestion. Okay. Okay. Richard saw no. Okay. Richard pushed the door open and said that Faye was standing in the corner of the room in the dark facing the wall. She was standing up on her toes, dragging her hands and nails down the wall and talking to herself. With her back turned to the guys, she said, "Oh, their skin is so perfect. Which one? Put him down in the hole." Richard saw something out the window and hurried over to it. Jason stepped inside the room and reached out to put a hand on Faye's shoulder, but she whirled around quickly and covered her face with her hands. Her eyes were open, which is unusual for her when she sleepwalks. Then, and these are the exact words Jason used, she started speaking in the voice of a little kid. She made whining and crying sounds, rocked back and forth on her feet, cradling her arms as though she held a child. Then she turned around and started scratching at the wall again, still whispering in the kid's voice, saying things like, "It's Faye, I can't see you. Are you up in the trees or down in the hole?" And then she started singing again. Richard ran down the stairs and out the front door, barreling down toward the tree line. From the window, he had seen a small child walking around on its tippy toes, flailing its arms up in the air. On the phone, he told me he could hear it singing while he watched it from the window. When Richard got about 20 yards away from the kid, it took off running on the balls of its feet, heading straight to the trees. Richard stayed in pursuit and went after it. It was too dark for him to follow, and he lost the kid after a few moments. He wandered around for a few minutes, searching the area, and eventually heard the voice of an adult male. Rich says he walked a few steps deeper into the grove and saw a huge man standing around 30 feet away, completely naked, looking up into the trees. There were lacerations or dark pockmarks of some sort all over his body. Now, Richard is about 6'1", 210 pounds, and bulky muscular, and he said this dude was way bigger than him. He said the man was perfectly still for several seconds and started rolling his head around, cracking his neck loudly, started making gurgling and mumbling sounds. I guess Rich was paralyzed with fear because he claims he stood there for an entire minute or more before running like hell back to the house. As he turned back to get out of there, the man let out a long hello, and as he did, his voice transformed. It became my voice. Richard said that the thing in the woods called out with my voice several times as he fled, wailing, "Please help me, and they're gonna kill me tonight." Jason says that he did not hear or see anything out in the window. Only Richard running back inside, ghost white with terror. He said Richard actually cried while they talked in the living room. Faye sat at the top of the stairs just watching, wide awake, with a little smile on her face. The next morning, they took her to her psychiatric appointment, the first she's ever had, and will hopefully hear back on that soon. It kills me that I'm not there with her now. I'm still stuck at Pikes Peak. It's like this place doesn't want me to leave. The ranger station shut down the entire road network on the mountain because of the huge blizzard that rolled in. There are avalanche warnings. My road out of here is completely iced over, and one part of it has a snow collapse / mini avalanche. Shut up, I'm from California where God pays attention, alright. And I'm in contact with the ranger. His name is Greg, just like Faye's dad, so that's why I avoid referring to him by his name in these updates. And he assures me they're working on getting the roads cleared every time it stops snowing. I missed my flight, but thankfully they gave me a voucher so I can just roll into the airport whenever I can. I have enough food to feed an army. And the electricity here is surprisingly reliable, so I'm warm. The Wi-Fi dips out for 5 to 10 hours at a time, though. I'm working on Donkey Kong Country 2 and Secret of Mana, on the SNES, and writing about my experiences here in my spare time. I also slipped on the icy porch steps and fell on my side, so I've got an enormous bruise, and it hurts like a bitch, but only when I breathe, so I got that going for me. Another Reddit user asked me if the cabin had a basement, and I had never thought to check. Outside under the snowpack, and halfway covered with old chopped wood, I found a little locked door. The key was in the kitchen cupboard, and it turns out there's a decent-sized cellar under the house. Down inside, I found a ton of creepy shit. There's a bundle of long black hair, several dozen jars of some rotten mutant-looking shit, and tons of old books from the 60s and 70s, and a lot of porno magazines. There is also a lot of sticks and yarn, all the material necessary to make a dream catcher, like the one hanging at the tree line behind the cabin. I didn't touch anything, I just noped straight out of there. I've been thinking about something that another Reddit user said to me the other day, which was, have you considered that it is not a dream catcher at all? And he's right. I'm not an expert on Native American symbology or artifacts. It just kind of looks like a dream catcher to me, so I've been calling it one all this time. Tiwe, the Pueblo friend of the ranger, didn't call it that. He just said to leave it alone. I'm wondering if that thing attracts the imposter instead of keeping it away. It could mark the house. I kind of want to move it for one night to see what happens. Well, he told you to leave it alone. After all, T would bless the entire cabin, so I feel quite safe, and I have the fucking gun. Dude, are you serious? He told you to leave it alone. At about 9:30 in the morning, there was a knock on the cabin door. I grabbed the gun, suspecting another encounter with the imposter. It was, just don't talk to him. It was lightly snowing and gloomy, so I figured the sun was blocked out enough that the creature would be willing to come out of the woods. But then I heard familiar voices talking cheerfully. I looked out the window, and to my total surprise, it was Tiwe and his son Nathan. These badass motherfuckers had hiked up from the ranger station in the snow to check on me. I let them in and they made me tea. I cannot tell you how happy I was to see them. Tiwe brought me his own dream catcher. It was one he made specifically for me, and he told me I should hang it beside the creepy one. It's very colorful and ornate. I could tell he spent a lot of time on it. It's even got 2 beautiful hawk feathers dangling off of it, which Nathan says represent freedom and unboundedness. He reiterated the importance of finding the engagement ring Faye had lost and blessed the house again. I tried to get them to stay longer, but they had to get back down the mountain before the storm picked up, and told me I should come with them. We all knew I wouldn't. If I left with them, I'd be leaving Greg's truck, and I'd never have found what I came back for. I said goodnight, and T-Ray hugged me. I wish that guy was my grandpa. This guy talks about this other guy more positively than his wife. Well, his wife is currently being, possessed, okay? I took a nap after they left. I figured out how to sleep without being interrupted by the goddamn voices in the forest from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's pretty quiet outside, so I nap on and off, but something really bad happened this time. I woke up... sorry, it's very late. I woke up opening the bathroom window. I've never sleepwalked before in my entire life. Faye's been sleeping next to me for 5 years, and she says I don't move, I don't speak, I don't snore, I don't steal sheets. I'm the most polite bed buddy on earth. But when I came to, I was standing next to the toilet, both hands prying the frozen window open. It was about 2 inches up, and the freezing cold wind on my fingers is what woke me up. I slammed it shut and checked all the windows, ensuring that they were locked and sealed tight, then went back to bed. I dragged one of the living room chairs into the bedroom with me and propped it against the door so that I'd knock it over if I got up again. This didn't work. At around 1 p.m., I woke up standing at the front door and found myself pulling it open. The loud groans it issued were what snapped me out of my stupor. I slammed the door shut and locked the window and looked out to the window next to it, praying nothing was out there waiting for me at the tree line. I saw nothing. Then I remembered that I'd had a dream. Images of a huge hole carved into mountain surfaced in my mind. Snow and branches were caked all around the mouth of the entrance, and an impossible yawning blackness emanated from within. In the dream, I just kind of stood there, gazing into the vacant face of the deep, listening to Faye's weakened cries. I sat down on the couch and just sort of cried for about half an hour. I thought about what our lives had become and how bad I missed her. I thought about all of the dreams we have of our future, the things that can never be if I don't figure out how to save her. I thought about all the promises I'll never be able to keep if I die up here. I decided that it would be best to hang the dream catcher sooner rather than later, because the clouds broke for a while, and it was fantastically bright out. I got geared up and trudged across the snow with Tiwei's gift, and hung it on a branch about 3 feet away from the evil-looking one. And that's when I saw it. Faye's engagement ring. It was dangling there right in front of me, as if to tease me. Someone had woven it into the strings of the dream catcher. I stood there for a long time, right between the two objects. I couldn't figure out if some benevolent force was giving me a break, or if I was being taunted by whatever beings have haunted my footsteps ever since I arrived on the mountain. Retrieving the ring would require me not only to touch, but to destroy the creepy dream catcher. I had the thought to go ask No Sleep what I should do, but I feared that if I left for even 1 second, the ring would be gone when I got back. So I just tried to solve the riddle by myself. How I wish I'd brought the satellite phone out there with me. After a few minutes of standing there, I reasoned that Tiwei's dreamcatcher would probably do just as well in protecting me, if in fact that was the function of the original one. I also figured that if it were cursed or something, touching it couldn't actually be worse than leaving the ring there and allowing Faye to be completely consumed by her madness. If the ring has anything to do with the creatures who are controlling Faye and me while we sleep, then getting it back is a priority over not touching weird stuff in the woods. So that's what I did. I broke the brittle thing apart and took my goddamn ring back. What else could I have done? And as if on cue, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was a person, standing in the snow beside a tree about 20 feet from my side. I was so scared I didn't look directly at him. I just watched him in my periphery and prayed he hadn't noticed me. It was a man with black and gray hair and dark clothes, facing away from me. His head was tilted all the way back, and he was looking way up at the tops of the trees. His limbs looked mangled and bent and elongated, even without looking right at him. I slid the ring into my pocket as slowly as I could, trying not to make a sound, and as I did, the man hobbled around and faced me. I really didn't want to look now. I just slammed my eyes shut. I knew he was looking at me. I could feel his gaze on me. He started gurgling and making throaty noises, then said in a voice so threatening I can't even begin to describe, "Felix, I know you. Felix, I know you. Felix, I know you," over and over. I took off running and screaming like a bat out of hell. I screamed all the way back to the fucking cabin. I barricaded the front door with the couch and burned up half the sage I had left. I even prayed, like an actual prayer. I haven't done that since I was 15 years old. Things hitting on him. I'm really struggling to write this last part. It's taking me hours to finish this entry because I keep getting up to distract myself. The ranger isn't answering his phone, and nobody's at the station. Maybe the power's out? I don't know what I did by breaking that dream catcher, and I don't know what tonight's going to be like, but Faye, if you ever read this, and if something happens to me, don't forget. Your tenderness, your softened skin, all I needed, your love is my tourniquet. I have to say this even though I desperately want it to not be true. The man I just saw was Getaway. No. Well, here's the last part for now. Yeah, it says final update. I think the other stuff is like some sort of sequel. So yeah, we actually do get to finish it today. Okay. Here's the interview I've been promising for so long. As you can see by its link, there is no possible way I could have uploaded it at the cabin. This crappy Wi-Fi. What the heck? Is this a real video? No, it's not available. Sorry about my allergies. Sorry that this is so long. But people have been hounding me for as much information as possible. This will be my last update. We need to rest. Things spiraled out of control up here on the mountain. I made a decision that changed everything, and it almost killed me. Only time will tell if it was the right choice to make, but for now, I'm just piecing everything together in my mind and trying to convince myself that I'm one step closer to solving all of this. I destroyed the strange dream catcher that has been dangling on a tree branch behind the cabin since Faye and I first came to this place. Nobody knows who made it, what its purpose is, or why it's on the side of the tree facing into the woods rather than the side facing the house. I found all of the supplies to make another one just like it, locked behind a cellar door that someone tried to hide years ago. But when I broke the dream catcher, I learned everything I needed to know. T-Ray is dead. A lot of people have said otherwise, but I am certain of this. I saw his likeness stretched over the gruesome form of the thing that stalks these woods. It was broad daylight, and the look on its mangled face told me exactly what I didn't want to accept. I really am all alone. Okay, this sentence is followed by the two words, several Redditors. It just feels like a complete slap in my face after everything that I just read. We went for like a good few minutes without a mention of Reddit. Anyway, several Redditors have speculated that this thing only shows itself at night and always faces away from me because it cannot convincingly appear human, not without the help of the recently dead. T-Ray confirmed this during his first visit to the cabin, but when I destroyed that dream catcher, there it was, proudly masquerading in the skin and hair of my best friend on this mountain. In the sunlight, no less. I cannot even imagine how his son Nathan must feel if he's even alive. The two hiked back to the ranger station from the cabin, knowing a blizzard was coming. I'm sure that's when T-Ray died. When I got back inside the cabin, I completely lost it. I barricaded the door and windows with every piece of furniture I could, but there just isn't enough stuff inside this little cabin to protect me. So I sat there on the floor against the bed, clutching the gun, sort of wishing my dark visitor would come and kill me already. But of course this is Pike's Peak. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you here. So the mountain kept fucking with me. It was getting dark, and I was on the verge of a total psychological break. I've been running on 4 hours of sleep per night and a few naps for the past 2 weeks. My only hope for redemption just got turned into a puppet. And I was about to find out what happens come nightfall when the dream catcher no longer functions. So what did my brain decide was the best course of action at this point? To fall asleep. Somehow, I nodded off. In fact, I think my brain just did the hard reset, because nothing about that sleep was restful. Just went into a fear coma the minute the sun dipped behind the mountain. And then I woke up. I was in bed with the sheets pulled over me. The lights were off, all of them, and my hands were empty. When before they held Greg's gun, Magnum. When I opened my eyes, I supposed it was possible that I climbed into bed myself. After all, I caught myself sleepwalking twice the day before. But it took me a solid minute before I realized there was a fucking arm wrapped around my chest. I did not have the reaction you'd expect. Most people would fly out of bed screaming bloody murder, but the first thought I had was, where am I? My parents divorced when I was 3, so as a kid I'd spent a few nights a week at my dad's house and a few nights at my mum's. Sometimes I'd wake up in the dark and not be sure which bedroom I was in. It always took me a second to remember where I was. This was the thought that crossed my delirious mind. Maybe I was back at home in California. Maybe I was at Faye's parents' house in Arvado. I sort of rolled out from under the arm and tried to figure out who the hell was lying in bed with me. I'd been sleeping with the lights on for the past few nights, and I'd never in my right mind have turned them off right after seeing the creature so close to me a few hours ago. The body in bed beside me felt familiar, its warmth, its texture. I was pretty sure it was Faye, but I still couldn't remember if she was really with me up there. Then she spoke. She reached through the dark and touched my face and said, "What's wrong, Pop-Tart?" Yes, that's actually the nickname she gave me. Love me some s'mores Pop-Tarts. Actually, yes. S'mores Pop-Tarts are very delicious, but that is like an incredible amount of sugar. I really like Pop. They're so tasty. But I haven't had them in a while because it's too sugary. It's too easy to have as a snack. I wasn't really afraid, just overwhelmed with confusion. I asked her where we were and why the lights were off. She just squeezed my shoulder and said, "Honey, we're in Pike's Peak. There's a storm, the power's out. It's done this before. What's wrong with you? I got up out of bed. A feeling of dread was falling over me, heavier and heavier, the more awake I became. As soon as the sheets were off of me, I felt a blistering cold, colder than it's ever been in the cabin. The heat must have been off for hours. Only a bit of pale moonlight filtered through the windows, and it was barely enough to outline the objects in the room. I stumbled around looking for the flashlight, totally unable to remember where it was, and said, "Why the fuck is it so cold? Did you screw with the heat?" Faye tried to get me to come back to bed. She told me it went off and came back on earlier, and that it would probably be back on soon. Everything about her felt wrong, but her voice was perfectly clear. Her skin felt totally recognizable. I couldn't shake the strange feeling I had. I left the bedroom and walked out into the living room. It was even colder out there. I felt my way around with my hands and noticed a strong, icy draft coming down the hall. It's a straight shot from the living room to the bathroom at the other end of the hall, and from where I stood, I could see the bathroom window. It was wide open, a big 2-by-2-foot gap leading out into the snow. I went to shout, "What the fuck did you..." But Faye stepped out of the bedroom and stood in the hallway between me and the bathroom. She said something like, "Felix, you aren't feeling well. Do you not remember what's going on? You're sick." I almost believed her because I definitely felt dizzy and feverish, but it could have also been the mixture of disturbed and confusion and freezing cold. The thought that this was not really Faye invaded my mind, and I immediately regretted not knowing where the gun was. The only words I could find were, "Who are you and why are you here?" Faye just stood there in the darkness of the hallway. The only thing I could see was a little silver outline of her figure. Her face was entirely black, but even though her eyes were hidden, I could feel them burning into me, just as T-Way's had when I found the ring. It felt like we stood in the eye of a hurricane. Everything was totally calm, but I knew hell was about to break loose. There wasn't a single sound outside. No branches snapped, no snow crunched, no voices moaned. It was as if time had stopped completely. Faye didn't move even as she spoke. She held herself in the stillness of death. She said, "Felix." It wasn't to get my attention. It wasn't to convince me she was really my fiancé. It was a threat. She was reminding me that she knew my name. I still don't fully understand what the power is in names, but T-Way and Nathan believed it. And so many Redditors warned me about it. When she said my name, I felt smaller than her, even though I stand almost a foot over her head. "Do you remember the 5?" she asked. She still didn't move an inch. Not even her hair kicked up in the drafts that blew in from behind her. I can't remember, not in this place. I didn't know how to respond to this. I didn't know what she was talking about. All I could say was, "Get out, you are not welcome here." Again, Faye didn't move, but she did clear her throat. The sound she made was about 2 octaves deeper than the real Faye's voice. She inhaled sharply and said, "Tell me about the number 5. And that's when I knew. I remembered where I was, what day it was, and exactly what had happened up until this point. My visitor had finally come to call, and it no longer needed to be invited. I deeply regretted breaking that dream catcher. My hand instinctively slid over to my pocket, and to my relief, the little shape of Faye's engagement ring pushed back against my fingers. There was nothing else to do. I decided to throw down the gauntlet. I figured it was probably time to die anyway, so I might as well go out bravely. I just said, "I know who you are. You will never be Faye." I'm sorry that I'm flubbing this. She took a menacing step toward me. A gurgle seeped out of her throat. She inhaled again, more slowly this time, and demanded, "I want to know about the number 5. Tell me, Felix." I looked all around me on the counters for a weapon, but found nothing. The knife lock was on the other side of the short wall that divided the living room from the kitchen. There was only a roll of paper towels within reach, but in retrospect, I was so amped with terror that I probably could have beaten her ass to death with it. "I don't have a clue what that number means," I said. "In fact, about 5,000 people online don't either. Nobody knows, only Faye knows." My visitor started shaking with rage. Her face was wreathed with impossible black. There was an endless abyss in that stung my eyes. But then I realized something. This creature, whatever it is, has had access to Faye's mind for several hours every night, maybe for many years, maybe even since she first visited the cabin when she was 5 years old. And in all that time, it still hadn't learned everything about her. It could never perfectly imitate her because she kept some things buried so deep in her subconscious that not even this thing could find them. Whatever the number 5 meant to Faye, that deep places where she kept a secret, she didn't even go there in her dreams. The next part was all a blur. I said something like, "You are the one who speaks to her in her sleep." The visitor kind of nodded. I said, "You ask her things, she answers you. I hear everything she says." The visitor didn't react. Then I said, "You've asked her this question, just like you're asking me now, and she always says, 'No, I can't tell you.'" My visitor took another step forward, dragging a hand along the wall, as Faye had so many times in her sleepwalking fits. It raised up on the balls of its feet and twitched violently. It said to me, "I will make you tell me." It didn't try to mimic my fiancé's voice anymore. It sucked in a huge breaths, trying to control its rage. There is a certain feeling you get when you're about to die, when you're in danger and you might die. Fear completely overwhelms your senses and compels you to flee, to fight, to save yourself somehow. But past that point, when you know you're going to die, the fear becomes useless and disappears. This has happened to me only once before, when I was sucked into a riptide at the beach during an El Nino winter as a teenager. In that moment, I just wondered, will my body ever come back to shore? Will they ever know what happened to me? In this moment, my heart slowed down, and I didn't feel cold anymore. I just stood there, ready to be mauled to death. I was satisfied in the knowledge that I had not given this creature what it wanted, and therefore blocked it from using that knowledge as a weapon against Faye. Whatever 5 meant, this thing needed it to take full possession of my fiancé, and I wasn't going to let that happen. I laughed. I actually laughed and said, "Well, you're shit out of luck, buddy, because I don't know what the hell it means. Maybe you can tell me when you figure it out." The imposter laughed right back in my voice. Perfect mimicry. Then it said, "Well, then we don't need you anymore." It lunged at me. I have dodged a rabid German shepherd like I was a ninja, but this thing was so fast and so strong, it knocked the wind clean out of me. I tumbled backward and crash-landed on my shoulders on the tiles near the front door. It unleashed a barrage of blows on my face and neck. It raked my sweatshirt with razor-like claws. I tried my best to defend myself, but it was so dark in the house I couldn't see almost anything. I managed to flail my way free of its grasp for just a second. I pulled myself up to my feet by grabbing the counter, and in doing so, my hand brushed against the little bundle of sage I've been burning. The imposter was on me like lightning, grabbing me by the back of my neck and pulling me with the strength of a 250-pound man. I very ingloriously whirled around and mashed the sage bundle into the creature's face, burnt end first, and wrapped my other arm around its head. Faye's familiar locks tangled in my fingers. I pulled its head forward and jammed the brittle sage into its eyes as hard as I could, screaming like a banshee. It shrieked and growled in some inhuman language and tried to push me away. But I held on as hard as I could and kept driving my fingers into its eyes, crushing the twigs in them. A memory of Nathan and T-Way's chant surfaced in my mind, and I shouted the only part of it I could pronounce. Tineke Adan, Tineke Adan, Tineke Adan. Who knows if I'm even remotely close to the correct spelling. My hands slid over its face, and the mockery of Faye's appearance fell away. I couldn't see in the dark, but the face no longer resembled my fiancé's. The mouth was much too big for a human's, and the wet lips draped across the maw of 100 fangs. And that was it. The bastard had had enough. It screamed and growled and took off on all fours, its limbs elongated as it moved farther away from me. Its shape became recognizably inhuman even in the pale light. It barreled up the bathroom wall and out the window, and in moments it was completely gone. I'm definitely not afraid to cry. I do it at funerals, at weddings, during the Hunchback of Notre Dame, well, etc. Like the Disney movie, or... Because I feel like the original story is a lot more sad than the Disney movie, but whatever. I'm a little embarrassed to admit how long and hard I cried after that creature left the cabin. I have never felt so utterly, miserably alone in my entire life. I only stopped when the power came back on, probably 20 minutes later. The heater kicked on instantly, and I ran over to shut and lock the bathroom window. My satellite phone was gone, the gun was gone, probably outside in the snow or up in a tree or down in the hole. when it burned down, Okay. I peeked out the kitchen window and saw something lying on the porch, right near the front door. When I cracked the door open just for a second, I saw that it was T-Way's Dreamcatcher. It had been destroyed and placed in front of the cabin, mocking me, or reminding me that I was unprotected. I checked the timer on the little battery clock in the kitchen, and it read 12:15 a.m. I was going to have to spend another night in this godforsaken cabin, but I vowed to myself that at daybreak, no matter the conditions, I would take Greg's truck and get down the mountain or die trying. I didn't care if I slid off the cliff face. I'd never watch the sun go down in Colorado ever again. For a while, I actually considered leaving right then, in the middle of the night. Many Redditors have reprimanded me for not doing this before. But I assure you, even in this situation, driving in the dark on that icy little road next to the 400-foot cliff is a complete nope situation. But the mountain had other plans for me. At one point, I risked sneaking outside to determine how deep the truck was buried. But as I approached, I saw that the snow had been dug out around the 2 front tires, and they'd been slashed to ribbons. All I could do was let out a grim laugh and trudge back inside. At least it was warm in there now. At around 1 a.m., the voices started up. They rose from far off in the woods, several of them at once, groaning and screaming dark elegies to the night. It was all the same evil gibberish I'd heard 1,000 times before, but they slowly made their way into the open field, and eventually, it's just the outside cabin. Just outside the cabin, I'm sorry. I lit the remaining pieces of sage and did a once-over on all the windows that weren't barricaded with furniture. I also donned the medicine pouches and amulet that T-Way and Nathan had given me, hoping they'd be similarly effective in protecting me. Then I remembered T-Way's useless dream catcher and imagined my crumpled corpse lying in the snow beside it. Outside the front door, I distinctly heard my own voice calling. Faye, it's me, Felix. Faye and Felix. Let me in, let me in. And from near the bathroom window, my voice again saying, Hi, sweetie, I miss you so much. It repeated a few other things I've said on the phone in conversations with her, and even a few things I said to her while she was sleepwalking back at our home in California. There were footsteps on the roof, 2, maybe 3 pairs of little feet, stomping all over the ceiling, voices of crying children paired with them. I stood there in the kitchen, clutching a knife and the herbs, waiting for the end. The voices circled the cabin, as though a handful of deranged lunatics were slowly marching around the perimeter, singing the songs of hell as they went. They begged for help, they laughed maniacally, they whispered and screamed and talked entirely to themselves, all at once. Their dim shadows passed the window curtains over and over. I heard the glass breaking in the bedroom, and then in the bathroom. The stomping on the roof grew louder, and the voice at the front door grew more urgent. Someone began knocking on the door, and the others tapped on the living room windows. They all started screaming, Faye, Faye, let us in. And Felix, are you there? And then, as if heaven sent, a blinding white light illuminated the entire cabin from the inside. All of the window curtains at the front of the house lit up, and the sound of motors drowned out the hellish cries. Someone had driven up to the cabin. I heard doors opening and men calling out, coherently. Footsteps on the roof thundered overhead to the back of the cabin, and then the screams of children drifted off into the woods out back, echoing as they withdrew. The ranger bashed on the front door, calling out my full name, instructing me to come outside. I looked out the window and saw 5 men, some in uniforms, and the ranger. There was a humongous off-road snowplow, 2 snowmobiles, and a big truck. They'd come to save my life. When I went outside, I just walked up and hugged the ranger. I didn't even grab my winter jacket. He informed me that they were getting everyone off the mountain because of a problem with the power grid. He said he feared I'd freeze to death. The ride down the mountain would have been the happiest ride of my life, except for the view. We snaked across slippery white roads, and even with the truck's high beams on, I could see the brightest stars I'd ever witnessed. But beneath them, dangling in the trees, were dozens and dozens of human bodies. They swung by rope from their feet or necks. Some of them were flayed or missing parts. The ranger did not appear to notice, and I kept my mouth shut. As they passed overhead on our downward crawl, I could almost make out frozen faces, lifeless for years, maybe decades. Their black blood stained the trunks of the trees. I'm not sure if these were the spirits T-Ray talked about, or if I had simply been experiencing temporary insanity, Not sure I'll ever know who they were, but I'm guessing that if the Rangers showed up any later, I would have become one of them. I will never forget the haunting image of passing underneath them. We arrived at the ranger station, and I remained there overnight. I slept on a cot in a room of about 15 people, all locals from different places on the mountain. I asked the ranger if he'd heard from T-Ray or Nathan, but he said he had not. The next morning, one of his men drove me straight to Denver International Airport, and I boarded a plane without any luggage whatsoever. It didn't matter. I had the ring in my pocket, and I'll never need another jacket again, as long as I live. When I finally got home, Faye let me have it. She kept kissing me and yelling at me. I understood. She was angry that I'd spent so much time trying to take control of this situation, treating her like a child and disregarding her feelings in my crusade to rescue her. She was upset that I consigned her to the care of my best friends without asking, but seemed to appreciate their help. Richard and Jason were very happy to leave my house and never look Faye in the eye again, although they did have some good news for me. Faye had not sleepwalked or sleep-talked or done anything out of the ordinary in over 24 hours. This corresponds almost exactly with when I retrieved the ring from the dreamcatcher. After an hour or so of reprimanding me for being a thick-headed idiot, Faye forgave me, and we laid in bed together and talked about everything. I apologized to her for the way I treated her and put the ring on her finger. She looked relieved to have it back on. I swore I'd never screw up like that again. We both slept a full night. No strange night terrors or bad dreams or sleep disturbances of any kind. And in the morning, yesterday morning, we had Faye's favorite, waffles. At about 11 in the morning, I received a call. To my great relief, it was Nathan. I immediately pressed him for information about T-Way and what exactly had happened after they left the cabin that day. He ignored my questions and said very ominously, "Please let me speak to the one who followed you home." I said something like, what? To which he replied, "The one that calls itself Faye." My fiancé and I had been sitting on the couch watching the most recent Game of Thrones, so I just sort of handed the phone to her and said, "It's for you." She put it to her ear and said, "Hello?" and then listened for about a minute. I could hear Nathan speaking, but I could not make out what he was saying. Suddenly, a volcano of black puke exploded from Faye's mouth. It absolutely covered the couch and carpet and sent me nearly jumping out of my skin in the process. Faye doubled over on the floor like a ragdoll, coughing and sputtering. I fell to my knees beside her, panicked, asking if she was all right. I picked up the phone and screamed at Nathan, demanding to know what he had said to her. Nathan just said, "Please, Felix, please listen," and then proceeded to recite some sort of chant or incantation. A wave of syrupy vomit rushed up my throat and out of my mouth, and as with Faye, it was oily black. I'm actually an emetophobe. So vomiting sends me into a state of near catatonia, but Faye had made a very quick recovery and was right there to nurse me back to my senses, okay? Nathan spoke to me a bit more and explained what he had done. I'll get to that in a bit. Faye and I spent the rest of the day feeling queasy and eventually went to urgent care across the road to get out. They gave us blood tests. And checked our vitals and sent us home, telling us that we suffered minor food poisoning, but I know deep down it wasn't the damn waffles. Thankfully, for the past several hours, we've been feeling much better. Poor guy, his fiancée got replaced by a doppelganger and has to watch Game of Thrones' shitty finale. Okay. I mentioned a while back that T-Ray and Nathan had a disagreement over who the real Faye was, and whether it was even possible for a duplicate of my fiancé to exist. When they hiked back down the mountain from the cabin a few days ago, they had to go up into the forest to avoid the snow collapses all over the road. Out there in the woods, they heard the crying of a woman and followed it to an abandoned mine. Both of them knew that it was very likely a trick, but T-Ray said that it was their duty to explore the possibility that Faye was alive somewhere on the mountain. The blizzard came on earlier than expected. They stood at the mouth of the mine, listening to the begging of a young woman somewhere off in the dark, but concluded that its voice was too unusual to be a human's. T-Ray and Nathan decided to bless the entrance of the mine, which could ward off its dark inhabitants. By their chanting enraged whatever lived in it. It came out of the tunnels and snatched T-Ray. He screamed all the way down into the dark, and Nathan could not follow. He ran away terrified, got lost in the blizzard. He wandered for an hour, fearing death, and eventually came upon a skinned body swinging from a low tree branch. It was so fresh the body had yet fully frozen. Nathan knew it was his father's corpse. Eventually, he found his way back home. He said his father's voice guided him out of the squall, Nathan explained to me that the imposter's goal of taking over someone's mind was different from its penchant for killing people. These creatures hunt and kill at random, salvaging the human parts they need to walk the earth as mortals for a short time, but their real pleasure derives from conquering a person from within. Faye was one of the unlucky few that are chosen in this way, and the imposter's fixation on her had lasted for decades. After long enough, their continued presence in the body and mind of a victim leaves a stain on the soul. This corruption necessitates a purge, hence the barf party we held in the living room, whose stains, by the way, I have thus failed to banish. Nathan invited me to the funeral ceremony for Tua. I sadly declined as I am already on the verge of losing my job. And flat broke from this experience. But I promised that I'd honor his memory in my own way. I can't go back to that place. Fortunately, Nathan was more than understanding and promised we'd meet again soon. I'm still thinking about all of this. I do not yet have all the pieces of the puzzle. If you're looking for all the answers, you're going to have to help me find them. But I think I have part of this figured out. The imposter gave Faye's ring back to me. They wanted me to destroy the Dreamcatcher. The ring was an object of great sentimental value, both to Faye and to our relationship. The creature used it to invade Faye's mind and control her thoughts. Its goal was to convince her that it was me, so that she would welcome it into our house late at night. The home, Nathan said, symbolically represents the body, just as the ring represents our union. To be welcomed into the home is to be granted access to Faye. Do you want me to own this PS5? But because the imposter could never learn everything it needed from Faye to mimic me, it gave up on that project and instead came after me. It returned the ring to me, thus giving up its power over to Faye, but I broke the Dreamcatcher to retrieve it. As it turns out, that creepy, mysterious Dreamcatcher was in fact protecting the cabin. And everything inside it, which is why the imposter needed to be invited in. When I broke it, the creature could have easily come in and killed me, but it needed information from me before it did. It needed to know one of Faye's darkest secrets to rule her. I'm not sure I'll ever unravel the mystery of the number 5, but I do know one thing. Not knowing what it means actually saved Faye's life. I'm not sure I ever want to know. As for Faye, she's back to normal and in perfect health. She sleeps soundly and only mumbles a bit, which is pretty normal for her. Her sixth sense of humor has returned as well. Last night as we went to sleep, she turned out the light and said to me, "Thank you for trying so hard." Then she leaned over and licked my face. Edit. I'm overwhelmed by the kindness and reception of the No Sleep community. Your words really do mean a lot to me. And to Faye, we read them together. Thank you very much. Thank you for the gold ×3. New update. Link at the top of the post. Scroll up. Yeah. Okay. So, that was the romantic cabin getaway story. I suppose it is a creepypasta. It was very good. That was fantastic. That was amazing story. I realized I was reading through it. It doesn't just remind me of Twin Peaks. It reminds me of Alan Wake's, with the stuff with like his wife and I don't know, any story that has a sort of creature. This is gonna be hard for me to articulate because it's so late and I've been streaming for over 3 hours. But any story that has like some sort of like creature or like non-human being that is like it's trying to like insidiously like get inside of your head and like use you for something. When it's done well, it's like really, really cool, and I really enjoy that. So I think I do want to get more endings for No, I'm Not a Human, although that's not exactly the same thing. That's a lot more like The Thing. But yeah, it reminds me of like Jean Grey. Yeah, it reminds me of like Alan Wake, Twin Peaks. Also this one episode of Doctor Who, 2 episodes of Doctor Who. One of them from Tennant's era, and one of them, more recently from Chutigawa, that last season. That was one of the best episodes. It was actually a continuation, sort of. It was like connected to this other one, the one called Midnight. That's seriously one of my absolute favorite episodes. It's just like so good. I love it. But yeah, I don't know. This story, it was well written. It was clearly thought out. Sometimes when I read a creepypasta, I feel like, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like there was as much forethought toward what the end of the story is going to be, other than like, oh, there's like a bunch of gross and creepy stuff, but it is always very satisfying when there's like hints of a mystery and then it gradually starts to make sense. And like, yeah, so the fact that the creepy looking dream catcher was actually something that was protecting them, that was interesting. Yeah, so this was a different type of stream than I usually do. And I'm glad that I did it. It was fun to read these stories. Didn't expect to read one that was so long, and there's other ones on my list that I didn't get to read. But yeah, a lot of the like really good stories are quite long read. So I will possibly read the sequel or prequel to this that is included in the post on some other stream. For upcoming streams, I mean, I'm probably gonna rest for the weekend. I was getting really excited about streaming and like making stuff, but I really need to rest a lot. So some point next week, I'll continue with the horror game stuff, but I'll think about that later because it's so late. But yes, thank you for joining me on this Halloween stream. Happy Halloween. I hope that you enjoyed. I will now disappear.